Good evening. I hereby call the Palm Springs regular City Council meeting of January 25th, 2024 to order. For our Pledge of Allegiance today, it's going to be led by Josue Jacob Arriaga, a 12th grader from Palm Springs High School. Josue entered the Palm Springs School District as an English learner. His determination and commitment to education is truly commendable. During his sophomore year, returning from social distance learning, Josue had to readjust to school. His goal is to attend UC Irvine for mechanical engineering, and it's led him to challenge himself academically by enrolling in honors and AP classes to showcase his commitment to higher education. In addition to his rigorous schedule, he's maintained above a 4.0 GPA since sophomore year, is an active participant in the Spanish Honor Societies, and serves as section leader for French horn in the school band. In an effort to give back to students, he has tutored others after school since junior year. His accomplishments and dedication exhibit a person that is motivated, compassionate, and academically driven for success. He was recognized last year by Chief Andy Mills as part of the Do the Right Thing program created by Terry Ketteler. This way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I know your family couldn't be here, but it's on YouTube and recorded, so. City Clerk, could you conduct a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Hostage.
Here.
Councilmember Middleton.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart. Mayor Bernstein.
Here.
4 members present.
Okay, we are going to have a presentation on the College of the Desert that is going to be led by Laura Hope and Dr. Scott Atkins.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dr. Atkins and I are very pleased to be here and excited to share with you the progress on the Palm Springs campus site project at College of the Desert. If I can direct your attention to just a little bit of an overview, we're going to do a little bit to define the project of the concept of our campus, since it's important that it align with our values and our overall strategic directions. We are also going to talk a little bit about the services and academic offerings that we're planning for this site, as well as an architectural overview with renderings. We want to share a little of the public input that we've received, and you also have a supporting document that goes along with that public input. And then we'll define the project phases, the schedule that we have coming up, as well as ways for you to stay informed as the project continues. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we know that this has been a long road, and we're very excited to say that we have both momentum and a strong level of commitment that we're excited to share with you tonight.
Sorry for interrupt. I forgot to say your titles.
Very well. My name is Laura Hope, and I'm the interim superintendent president at College of the Desert.
And I am Scott Atkins. I'm the Director of Education Centers for the West Valley at College of the Desert.
So that's you.
Okay, thank you. As most of you know, it's been a long time coming. This quote here is from 2011, actually. And this has guided us through this arduous process that we've been going through. But also we want to point out that that we are still concentrating on these areas or these sectors, including doing general education. But the most important part about this project is to be forward-thinking and look at the different ways that education is moving in the future. So we want to be that. We want to be that portion for industry, not only for our traditional classes, but for industry and moving on for partnerships in the community. So currently in Palm Springs, we already have a temporary campus, so these things are already going on at our campus, on temporary campus. We have enrollment services, we have counseling opportunities, we have large computer labs for students to be able to have access. We do things from student IDs, which leads our students to be able to be involved in the food pantry and food box program to help those who have food needs. We have also, that gives us to bus services. The IDs allow us to, our students, to venture into Sunline, and also we are starting this coming week Roadrunner Express, where we will have a shuttle that goes from DHS to Palm Springs to Palm Desert and back and forth all through the day to make sure students, all they have to do is get to one of our locations and we will take it from there. But we also have our Tutoring Academic Skills Center and library services, and we also have disabled students services as well. And also our academic offerings. Currently, we already have a film and production room. Is it going to be as pretty as the one you're going to see tonight? No, but it is still functional, and we are doing a lot for that. We have a digital design production there as well already. We are already doing partnership and community education, our PACE programming, where even in the summer we have students come from PSUSD to come and do robotic camps and coding camps and things like that on our campus. We offer ESLN classes throughout for non-credit. And then we have all the general education, including some science labs this time coming up. We also have a great partnership with California Indian Nations College. We are helping them and supporting them in their accreditation process. They have all their in-person classes on the Palm Springs temporary Palm Springs temporary campus, and they also have most of their student support services, and we were working hand in hand with them. Today, they actually had their orientation for all their students, and the campus was full of the students there going through their orientation, and we're very proud of that.
In addition to what you've heard already exists, it's important also to recognize that the Palm Springs development is part of our guiding principles for the college. These represent really the value system of the college, and we recently completed our strategic educational master plan, which we conclude every 5 years, that really tracks the progress and the direction for the college overall. I think there's been maybe a history of people looking to the superintendent president for the vision of the college. The vision is in the strategic educational master plan. And the values that are on the screen right now really embody what we're hoping that the Palm Springs campus will demonstrate and live into as well. Particularly innovation, student success, social justice, and equity. So those are very important values to us and are part of our design process. The next slide is just a very quick site overview, and it's color-coded, as you can see. Whoops, let me go back. So as you can see from this, the largest area of the campus is that purple area, which we call the accelerator. In a lot of ways, that's going to have a multifunctional purpose, and we'll talk a little bit about what it will do as we look at the renderings. But that's a place where instruction will occur, small group collaboration, one-on-one. There'll be all kinds of different learning opportunities, and that is the most flexible space on the campus. We also have our Culinary Institute in the middle in green. That will house not only the instructional areas, but also a showcase kitchen where demonstrations can occur. And so our Hospitality Culinary Institute, and we are also evaluating the need for a casino management bachelor's degree, which would be housed within that space as well.
Excuse me, my friends at the Food Network would love, I guarantee you.
Excuse
if I
me?
asked them to come and be a guest star at the culinary. Right, Eddie?
You would like to sign up for public comment afterwards?
Yeah, they will. They'll all come to Palm Springs. They will, and they'll do guest appearances at the.
Thank you. We also have the Event Center in blue on the corner. And whenever you see the sort of curved wall in any of our renderings, you know that's our event center. And that's an area where we're going to be able to do events internally, as well as have the public utilize that space as well. As the slide indicates, there are 841 parking stalls scheduled with a total of 167,000 gross square footage. That also includes, though, our M&O and support structure that's there on the left. This is the overall campus look toward the west. As you can see, as I mentioned, on that right-hand side, that curved wall, that's the event center. So that's going to be a really kind of showcased area. People will know right away that that is the city, that is the community college and the event center, and it will be branded as College of the Desert, but we also hope to share that with all of our community partners. That middle area is the main entrance where there's a shade structure connecting the two buildings. And you can see beyond, that is our landscaped parking area. So we think that the flow has been designed very well and that it's really going to bring kind of a showcase to this particular area.
So we've done a lot of research and thinking about mobility on this campus. You'll see that there are areas that are red where there are vehicles entrance. I'm going to try to point.
I tried.
You did? Oh,
there you
I
go.
did. So right up there is the Tahquitz entrance. It's already at a light, so that's one of them. And then down here on the bottom is Baristo. There is already a light there, and that will be the Baristo entrance. And then we're going to create a larger entrance on Farrell Drive, coming off of Farrell Drive. Also, there are two delivery, if you can see those, they kind of look reddish-orange in this, but right behind the Culinary Institute, there is a delivery portion for the Culinary Institute and the Event Center that's behind a gated wall. And then down here, we have a loading dock for mostly our architectural program and our film and TV production program, where they can actually load in for all the sets and all the things they would do in TV production. Then, as you'll see, it's very walkable and bikeable. On these, as you'll see on the green, let me point at it. It'll be easier to follow it, I think. Oh, well, not if I do. Here we go.
I just want to ask.
So here we go.
The actors, I can have them come. I bet Meryl Streep will come for the actors.
So what we need to do here is this goes from the mobility hub all the way up, and this large line there is for walkability and bikeability. Those areas are larger sidewalks so that they can be shared with bikes and walkers, and they will be indicated on different types of pavement to show wayfinding for that. We also have a connection with the CV Link that comes around this campus as well, and we've talked to them. We're also in conjunction with Sunline, as you'll see at the bottom, and we'll show the picture. Oh, I'm glad it's not moving as much as I'm hitting it. But right there, that's the mobility hub, which will utilize Sunline and probably some of our Roadrunner Express, as well as we have throughout the campus, we have places for ride shares to drop off. We've actually tried to protect the pedestrians in this way to where the ride share places are kind of off that area, and we're trying to avoid unintentional drop-off places that would either hinder traffic around the campus and inside the campus. As you'll see, we have reduced the parking, and the reason why we're doing that is because we believe a lot of people will use shared transportation in the future, and we're trying to be very cautious of that. As you'll see up at the top, it looks like in the upper left-hand corner, it's a more grayish area. That is going to be CG, which is more water permeable. It will not be asphalt. We believe that that could be developed in the future, and we didn't want to overdo it on that. And you'll see in future, in the future in these slides, you'll see more of how people can get across and everything. But what I do want to say is that the sidewalk that goes all the way from Baristo all the way to Tahquitz is raised. It is above the road, so all the cars have to slow down. Anytime they cross that pathway, they have to slow down and go over a bump, no matter where you are on the campus. This is a picture of the mobility hub that's on Baristo, right across from Palm Springs High School. And that was done intentionally so that they could come and be a part of the overall accelerator building. Now it's up to you.
So this is the view from the Farrell entry. I'm going to try this one more time. As you can see that this is a shade structure that kind of connects different portions of the building. It may be kind of difficult to discern, but you see we have the way these are framed and supported. That's actually one of the themes in all of our architecture is the shape of the date palm. So you'll see that throughout the spaces, and we have that on the Palm Desert campus and also have it on our new Indio site. Just to kind of look at some other outdoor spaces, this is the entry plaza. You'll see that these are skylights that allow the natural light in. We do see this as a programmable space. It's a central and grand entrance, which is what we were looking for, but we also see it as a place where we could have student services fairs, transfer fairs, our resource fairs, job fairs, all kinds of things that will bring students to the campus. Very quickly, this is the exterior of the event center where you see that we've got the College of the Desert branding out front. That is an LED screen that will display advertising and events notifications as it relates to the college and what's happening there. Again, it's very distinct, and we think it fits in well with the architecture that surrounds the area. And then this is Hospitality Plaza outside the area where our hospitality area is on the inside of instruction. And again, this is programmable space. Since we've got, really 7 or 8 months of the year that are really beautiful, we want to be able to take advantage of that indoor-outdoor instructional experience. And we hope that that brings an element, I think, of student life as well.
So there are many unique program elements here, including on the end of the accelerator, close to the public, we have an independent student health clinic that we're hoping to partner with people in the Valley to be able to run that and create clinical opportunities there. We have, of course, the lab, the large lab that you're going to see in a moment. We have a lot of social spaces inside and out where students can gather, and we're calling them sticking spaces where they can hang out. As you know, most of our students, because they live off of they live off campus because we don't have student housing, that they can come and stay for a while in between classes or find other opportunities on campus. We will have a maker space. We will also have, in the architectural program, we will have a maker space for them that will be a wood shop, and we'll have a wood yard where they can create their models. We have a film screening room. We have a flat floor studio that can be done in different ways. And as she mentioned, the demonstration kitchen. We'll have a student-run cafe, restaurant. We have a lot of hospitality spaces, including some mock hotel rooms, so students can train on those. And then, of course, we have the event center that we've already talked about. This is an inside look of the accelerator lab. It's 2 stories high. We kept the tree theme going throughout, so you can be on one end and look through it and see all the trees that are coming through these large white structures. We also see this as not only student support for academic and library services, but we see this as a way of putting up a few dividers and having a class in here. It's very much forward thinking that this room changes from day to day, from hour to hour, to create the needs that we need academically. This is one of the flexible classrooms. There's a lot of 2 or 4. This happens to be a quad of 4 classrooms that can be put together at one time and be one large room for even something like a conference or something else. But we can also divide it in 4 large classrooms. These are also, interesting enough, they're made to where industry can come in. So for instance, if we have somebody that has heavy-duty equipment and we need to start some innovative project there, these rooms are fitted to do that, for that, not just regular classrooms that have the regular size. And then we'll have a student cafe that'll be more of a grab and go that's in the accelerator. So this is a picture of this. And this is our film screening room where we see that students would also take their film classes in here because there's a lot of, but be able to produce that. But we see this as a part of being able to use outside entities, especially when we have the Palm Springs Film Festival, that we could really have a meaningful, smaller room for people to view films. And then this is the flat floor studio that has multiple uses. It does have stadium seating, but it also, that stadium seating can be pushed back. We can have regular classrooms there. We can have receptions there. We can have dinners there. This is a smaller event space that we'll be able to utilize not only for the college, but for community partners as well coming in. And this is also vetted out to be able to do a film screening in here as well. We want our film program to have different venues to do that in. And so I'm going to start talking about you have an attachment for this, but I want to talk about how we process public input. As many of you know, and as our friend Flynn over here helped us with, the board directed us last February to finish schematic design, and we had to choose, we had to get 3 different individuals from all the 3 cities, DHS, Cat City, and of course Palm Springs. And so we went through a process of 4 months of doing that. Thank you for letting Flynn help us. He is such a jewel to the city, and we really appreciate all that he did and the continued feedback that he gives us. It's been wonderful for us. So we did get feedback from our city representatives. During our schematic design meetings and design development meetings, we had open meetings there where we got information from the public, but also during those, we were meeting with faculty and staff to ensure the things that we were showing publicly, we're going to make it, we're going to fit, we're going to be the right thing for them. So we've continued to do that from February of last year, and we still have a couple of meetings now as we're doing construction documents. We reviewed all of the materials from all of those things. We put them in one big Excel spreadsheet, and then we made it pretty for you today. But we summarized it and correlated it with some of our, the Pfeiffer Partners is one of our architects that we've had since 2019 on this project, and they helped us put together all these themes. And we're going to continue to utilize this and meet with interested groups, and we're at the City Council today, but we're trying to get even continual feedback as we move forward. So these were kind of the major themes here. So one was the concern about Farrell and Tockwitz streetscapes and edges. Are we going to respect those streetscapes already, and how would that look like? We know that Farrell is a busy street, and we wanted to make it pedestrian friendly as well as buffer the streets from the large building mass. Pedestrian vehicle circulation conflicts, I've already showed you some of those and how we address those. The relationships to our neighbors, as you all well know, each side of this campus is a different side. So we have a streetscape, we have Tockwitz, which is the main road into town. Then we have Baristo, which is more of the educational space with Palm Springs High School. And then behind us, we have, a regular neighborhood. So it has a different feel on each portion of that, and we try to respect that and take that in consideration. And then phasing and future development, as you know, that the one thing that the board did not move forward with was the learning hotel. So we are leaving space for that or any other thing that the board and the district decides to do in that future development. And as I said, we even looked at the parking lot and said, hey, we're not going to completely develop this space so we can do something later in the future. The minor themes were to be intuitive and wayfinding and building entrances. So we didn't have to have a sign everywhere so people could understand where you go. And some of the vision of even the main entrance to the accelerator has those blue circles that go from the outside inside to help people know that that's the main entrance, that's where to go. Articulation of the mobility hub, meaning the shade, the waiting space. What you couldn't see in the accelerator lab is there's a lower portion that's a lounge in there. The students can wait on the buses and protected, whether it's hot or cold, or actually it rained the other day. So we love to protect our students even from the rain. So that will work. So that was taken consideration. We wanted to have power and Wi-Fi availability in outdoor spaces everywhere. We're finding ways to control that at night so that we don't have issues with people trying to use it at night and it being unsafe for them. So we're doing that as well. And then the prominence of the maintenance operations and the what we're calling the CUT building, central utility plant, that also has that in there. And so I want to stop, because you have a document there, and ask you if you have any general questions about the document. You should have this document right here.
Councilmember Garner?
Or if you have any questions about what we've been doing.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation and all this information. Have you been in contact with the Palm Springs Cultural Center? You're talking a lot about film, and
Yes,
just wanted to hear
and
what those conversations
And I
have been
followed
like.
up with him today. I said, we're probably going to talk about you. So yes, we've had several meetings. Some of them are programmable. In fact, Michael Green is on our film advisory committee and advisory board. So he's been involved in all of those. They've been invited to a lot of even the spaces in the accelerator. But we've also had discussions with him about how we're utilizing that space around, and we've actually changed some things according to what their needs were. And we've also been very intentional on making sure that he has the access there for their farmers market, and of course the antique, the vintage market as well. Thank you for that. I always call it the antique. I'm a Southern boy. We talk about antiquities all the time. But yeah, we've done a lot of work with him and talking to him about that, especially Michael, but several people at the Palm Springs Cultural Center, to ensure that. And as you see on the map, and I don't know where we are, but on one of the maps, we actually show, I think it is on, make sure I know where. So on slide 6, on page 6, you'll see those. They're kind of made in green, but we actually have one of our wider walkways intentionally from the Palm Springs Cultural Center straight over to the accelerator. So we did that intentionally on ours. So yes, we are working with them quite closely.
Great, thank you. And then just a minor note based on what you were mentioning about Wi-Fi. Were you talking about turning it off in the evening?
Having connections, like outside, having connections to that. We wouldn't turn off the Wi-Fi, but we would turn off the electricity at night. We're going to have even outlets near the cultural center to help them with their farmers market and all that.
No, that's not my concern. It was more the students. So during the
No,
pandemic,
the Wi-Fi will continue to go.
Yeah,
and
just the accessibility issues are still rampant throughout our valley.
Yes, exactly. But
Okay.
we want to have a way in which they're using the outdoor spaces where they'll still have Wi-Fi access and it won't be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Middleton?
Thank you. No, please go ahead.
No, I was just, if we can just briefly conclude, just want to indicate to the council that this overall is a $405.7 million commitment on the part of the district. We have already committed and spent $56 million on this project. This last week, the board unanimously approved the $200 million issuance of bonds so that we can continue to spend toward this project, because a lot of things are going to start happening, not the least of which is getting our plans complete, submitted to the state, and start moving forward on construction planning. So you can see that there are various project phases. We've already completed the schematic design, which, as Scott, I think, well explained, that was really an aspirational level of design. But then in design development, which we completed in November, we start refining a lot of the materials and a lot of the things that we want to use to make sure they're durable, they're beautiful, they connect. And so that has all been completed, as well as drawings to scale. And then our construction documents are in process, and we expect to submit those to the Department of State Architect in the next phase. We are sending that to them in pieces, which we've already begun working with them, and they are ready to work with us, looking at this in components rather than all at once. Moss, our construction company, works very closely with the Department of State Architects, so we have every confidence that that will go very smoothly. And we could hear back from the Department of State Architects within a matter of months once we make submissions. And then at that point, you can see that we're moving toward not only the start of construction in winter 2024, but the end of construction in winter 2026. We think this is a 2-year construction project with the idea that classes would begin in 2027. You will see this sign coming to the site indicating that, we are beginning construction very soon. It was a result of a conversation that we had with the City Council and the mayor in particular. And we'll be continuing to create signage and promote what's happening on site. We also, if you use this QR code, have a website on the updates of all of our projects, which includes our Palm Springs development. And I'm sorry, Councilmember Middleton, if you want to ask your question, I think we're better prepared.
I think I want to borrow your slide right there and say thank you back. This is been a long time coming, and there have been some detours along the way. But what we're seeing today is, I think, reflective of what was promised to the community and what the community wanted to see happen. And you're going to make an awful lot of people very proud, most particularly the students that attend classes in such a glorious space. I would encourage you to reach out to the neighborhood organization 1PS, to the business community, both of which were very much invested in making this happen, and make sure that we're aware of anything that you need from us. And lastly, I want to compliment Trustee Oden for his incredible work, and for all of the trustees. Thank you.
Councilmember Holstich?
Thank you. I want to echo those comments from my colleagues. Really appreciate you being here, and thank you to Mayor and now Trustee Oden for representing us and for his leadership on the board. We're very grateful for you to be here and presenting this information to our public. Councilmember Middleton and I have served on the City Council since 2017, so we had prior assurances that shovels would be in the ground by 2022, I think, and completed by 2024. And yes, we've been on some detours and some difficult places, and I'm just grateful for the college and the Board of Trustees' commitment to this campus. We have so many students who might use the temporary facility, but really are not able to take public transportation to your other locations, residents and students from Desert Hot Springs and further beyond, who really rely on this to be able to access education, public education. So thank you for your commitment to Palm Springs and building this facility, and the commitment of the resources. It will make a significant difference for so many of our residents. I have comments, and we were talking about who to send to you, and we sent Flynn to you instead of an elected official because he is such a great voice for considering all the planning considerations and everything else for the city. So you really have been working with our very, very best. I just wanted to flag some things that came up for me instead of just asking you a lot of questions. But I'd love for you to answer first how to get involved. So if residents do have questions or comments or feedback, how might they best give that to the college?
Yeah, one of the things that we're hoping to do is additional open house type meetings where we can share the schematics the way we've shared them with you. I do want to manage expectations, though. Once we get into a design phase, there's not a lot of changes that can occur. And one of the things that we try to do to manage people's expectations too is that we're building a school. Right, and so there are certain requirements that we have to have in order to build the requirements that we need. But we do want to encourage members community members to see what it is that we're doing. If they'd like to share feedback, we can do it at those convenings. And so if that's something that the council would also support, We would love to do those things for the community.
Thank you. That'd be great because we always learn so much from our community when we're doing that. And what an amazing site to be right by Palm Springs High School, to be right by the Cultural Center,
Yes.
right by, this hub of activity and opportunity for the students. So I also wanted to flag collaboration with the Palm Springs Cultural Center, not just the film festival, but they also do the farmers market, certified farmers market. So such an opportunity with your culinary programs. Wanted to ask a little bit about the event center because Mayor and I have been convening a working group on arts and culture and more. And so we've gotten a lot of questions about event space in Palm Springs and in the Coachella Valley. So could you just explain a little bit what the intent is of the event center?
Well, we're already in conversation with several people at the convention center, and we're trying to support what their needs are. And they have actually, we've had several from the convention center actually review some of the spaces to help us with that. We understand that we're not going to be in competition with the convention center, but we want to be the support to that. But we see it as number one, educational space for conferences and things like that, but also to have some, middle-sized events in the city that we can support. And a lot of it would be to train our students. We have a full kitchen in that event center that we would be able to, number one, train our students during the day, but then they would be able to be involved with that at night in an event. So we're working very closely with them and would like to be open up to anything that we could do there. It's going to be a different programmable than normally what happens at a community college, and we're very proud of that. Also, we're going to use the Culinary Institute, the demonstration kitchen, to do major events. We see this as bringing in chefs from all over the place to come in and not only sell tickets for the people to come in and have that great event, but for our students to be involved in a weekend with a major chef. And then they would then be able to also help serve and help do the things there. So that's a total portion of it, and we're looking into how to build our program now to support that, but also be involved in the community as well. And what you saw on there right above the event center, there's a little event lawn to spill out to, but also above that, in that area above that we're not developing fully right now, is a large space to have programmable things as well. So outdoor events, putting up tents and things like that. And again, we're talking a lot to the convention center to see what they're doing and see how we can implement that in a smaller way, of course, because it's a smaller area, but we are looking into that as well.
Thank you. And, we're not afraid of competition in Palm Springs. We don't
No,
see
no.
each other as competition. We know that a rising tide lifts all boats, and there's so
Yeah.
much opportunity, and this is going to be a world-class opportunity for all of our students and for our community, for everyone to learn from each other. So that sounds great. Thank you for that. When we had originally been talking about this, I know the architectural program was something that residents were asking about, and you had been working with different colleges to have a true architecture program. I know I'll get that question from my constituents. If you could just answer that, please.
Well, we're in the process of doing a memorandum of understanding. Right now, we're gathering data. We are working with Cal Poly Pomona. We see it as at least one cohort per year, maybe two. So what would happen is it's a total of 5-year program. Our students would do the first 2 years on the Palm Desert campus where we have our traditional program, and then they would be able to directly transfer into this program without jumping over any hurdles or anything. So it would be seamless. We're hoping to do something to where we might even have a cohort happen this coming fall because we already have students that are ready to do that. And so they would be able to stay in the Valley and be able to finish their 5-year architecture program on this Palm Springs campus. And right now we're in the data collection to ensure both sides that this is the type of program that we need and that we can sustain it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I know it's important to our community, and what an opportunity to have a 5-year degree on this campus and something that Palm Springs can offer the world for an architectural program. I just wanted to thank you as well for the shared space for community. That's also a need that we hear again and again from nonprofits and others. We, always get those requests as council members or the city looking for shared space for community meetings or gatherings or events. I appreciate the opportunity that you're leaving to expand potentially in the future. So you said that is going to be, is it CG or DG or
Crushed granite.
crushed
Yeah.
granite? Perfect.
I usually say DG, so I'm sorry if I misspoke, but it is crushed granite.
Okay, great.
It's
You
in
said
that one
CG,
area.
and I said, I know what DG is. Do I know what CG?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and I know we've talked a lot about having flex spaces and having outdoor space, and this is a really important corridor for the city. Next tonight you'll hear us talking about expanding our airport, and that's so close to that. So I would just push you to think through to have usable space. I know that COD in all of my meetings over the years, I'm pushing to make this happen with you, with your partnership. We talked a little bit about COD running the HOA for that entire site, and really the opportunity with the vintage market, which could be expanded, with the farmers market, with so many more events. And so, I'd love to see that be like truly usable space, and not just a big empty big lot of rocks. So if it could be grass or flex space or something, it could really be usable.
Yeah, we agree with you. As a matter of fact, I just had a meeting with the airport today, so we're also starting to talk about possibilities there.
Great, thank you. And then I think the big picture, I'll just say, I know it's a huge project. It's really significant. It'll be really impactful. It takes up still a small portion of the overall land that you control. And so I really think that there's opportunity there. I know you've been talking maybe to some folks about the possibility for student housing or other, gathering spaces or what else. I'm just really excited for all of the possibilities in the future with all of this area for education, and to really have an educational hub in Palm Springs with the high school and with you. So thank you for your commitment to this project and your leadership. We're so grateful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So thank you, Laura and Scott, for coming here. I know this is really a breath of fresh air to see this kind of a presentation, and more importantly, your enthusiasm for it, which is really exciting. I should mention Councilmember Gardner and I are on the subcommittee, so we have met with Laura and Trustee Oden and Kinnaman, and we'll probably be meeting again. But I have a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
The Tockwitz corridor, which is not developed, will that look nice, though, from Tockwitz?
Yes, and in your renderings that, we just got updated renderings like an hour before this meeting, so I wish I could show you those, but you'll be seeing those in the future. But we're, as I said, we're intentionally creating a lawn area or an open area for events. But in today's meeting, I had a meeting on landscaping this morning, by the way. We're talking about, of course, keeping the palms that traditionally go down Tockwitz the same, and then having lower vegetation on Tockwitz to protect that. There'll be some landscaping as far as moving dirt and having boulders, so it will be very beautiful. What we're trying to do is to make it beautiful and meaningful until we do future projects, but also we're wanting to ensure that that area is not a place where people are going to be there at the wrong time and in the wrong place, and we're trying to protect that as well. So a lot of our speaking and landscaping talks about how to make it beautiful, but how to make it usable, but how to still protect people from being in there and doing that. You realize we were looking at it the other day, and it looks like a large space, but it's only 1/10 of the total space in the project as far as land is concerned. But we are trying to do that in a meaningful way.
Actually, at one of the community presentations you did here, someone suggested the idea of a garden for farm to table for the culinary, which I really like that idea, and it doesn't seem like it has to be permanent. You also mentioned, in addition to you mentioned the 5-year architectural, you brought up the BA, the bachelor's degrees. And could you talk a little bit, like how you're able to offer bachelor's degrees?
Sure. So about 7 years ago, the California Community College's Chancellor's Office did a pilot project with the permission and support of the University of California and the Cal State system to offer bachelor's degrees through the community college that did not duplicate what was offered through the UC and the CSU. So our campus is currently going through a review process to evaluate what bachelor's degrees we think would work well for our area, both geographically and in terms of the labor market. So we have a group of faculty, as well as administrators, who are doing that review currently. We've got the relationship with Cal Poly Pomona, but that isn't us issuing the bachelor's degree, that's Cal Poly issuing the bachelor's degree. But we are evaluating the possibility of several degrees, one of them being casino management. The only other program is in Las Vegas. And given the numbers of opportunities for students here and the relationship that's automatic with culinary and hospitality, casino management seems like a really, fertile idea for us at this point. We're also evaluating automotive management, given the fact that we'll be opening Roadrunner Motors before we open this property, and that transportation and the automotive industry is such a vital part of the valley. We're also considering that as a bachelor's degree that we would offer at the Roadrunner Motors site. So those two are in contention, but there are others that are also being considered. There's an application process to the California Community College's Chancellor's Office, but it's clear sailing for both of those degrees because neither university systems offer those two programs.
All right, thank you. I just want to comment also, Councilmember Holstage brought up our Arts and Culture Roundtable, and I know you mentioned the Convention Center. There's a big need for more performance spaces. So is the event center able to also be a performance space? Okay, because there's I don't know, how big is that workspace?
The square footage of the event center?
Yeah, you just had to ask me. I think the square footage on the main part of the event center with all 4 rooms, because they, of course, have flexible walls that can be split into 4 different rooms, is about 7,000 square feet. Okay. It can seat up to about 400 people for a banquet and a lot more for other events. Also, that event lawn is, and as you notice, we originally were looking at putting an amphitheater there, but we felt like that wasn't the right thing for us to do, and especially since this is in a neighborhood, but we will still be able to have outdoor events and outdoor things according to all your regulations on that outside event lawn as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And I know Councilmember Holstage also wrote up the school district, and we have some representatives here. Could you, for the public's sake, about the opportunity high school kids and their tuition program to get to the COD?
Sure. We are also very appreciative that our partners from Palm Springs Unified are here, and we've had a number of conversations with them recently. We're really working on dual enrollment on 3 different fronts. And so currently, we offer dual enrollment with high school instructors who also meet the minimum qualifications to teach the college course. And the students who are enrolled during the school day at Palm Springs Unified also get college credit along with their high school credit. That is the only model that currently exists for us with College of the Desert. We are also, though, boosting our concurrent enrollment in which high school students can take online courses, and we've asked our partners to help us maybe work through the opportunity of offering a 0 period for those students where they would have access to a computer lab and we can send tutors and counselors to the high school site in order to support those students while they're also taking their high school classes. And then third, we've had some preliminary discussions to do some team teaching with our high school partners. So a high school instructor and a college instructor would both be in the classroom providing direct instruction, assessment, and developing the curriculum so that the student gets the advantage of both the high school and the college credit. So we're currently thinking through and working through these ideas. We think having the high school across the street from us creates an opportunity for us to go into what would be called like an early middle college, where students could literally walk across the street and take college classes during the school day. There's a lot to be worked out with that, obviously, but we're very hopeful that that partnership will yield the maximum of opportunity for our high school students.
Right, and is there a program where they get tuition assistance?
High school students have a college education afforded to them absolutely free, as well as their texts.
That's great. That's great for high school students. I know in the other presentation I saw, you talked about sustainability of the whole campus, and did you, I don't, maybe I missed that today, but did you?
Do you want to talk about the leads piece?
Yes, well, several things. Of course, we're going to be LEEDS certified, and the different buildings will have different levels of that according to what they're doing. We are an all-electric campus except for the gas in the labs and the Culinary Institute, those things for cooking or chemistry and biology and those type of things. We have involved biking, and we've addressed that, but also the sustainability. Everything is going to be natural to the desert. We are going to do minimal irrigation as much as we can. We'll do gray water and all of those things that we can do to create sustainability. We will have and I can't remember it, saved my life right now, but we are going to have recyclable water, and that's going to be very much on the forefront. Our central utility plant will actually be open with parts of it being glass on the front so people can peek in and see what we're doing on the central utility plant, but also see all of that going on. And then we have an educational portion of it where we're going to have different signs and things throughout that tell how we're saving energy and how we're saving water and all those things. That's been very much. 50% of the energy will come from our solar roof that we will have on the, that's part of the concept of the super roof that we have. And so we're doing all those type of things to ensure that sustainability, including the materials that we're choosing for the building, going back to that modernistic principle of having sustainable, strong materials that will last forever and ever and ever.
Oops, that's great. And I know that you're talking to a lot of people in our community, the Architectural Alliance and the hospitality and culinary and film and digital. So you've got a lot of experts that live in the city who also like to teach. So my last and most important, how confident are you in the timeline?
Very.
Very cool.
And if I can say, part of the reason I'm so confident is because we have anticipated the process with the Department of State Architects. They are on board with us before we even submit, which is sometimes the longest part of the project to get their feedback. Because once we get that feedback and we get any direction from them, we can start moving very quickly. And I think the $200 million bond sale is indicative of the board's confidence in that timeline as well. Because we need access to that cash in order to move forward.
In addition, I don't know, I've seen so many documents the last 2 days. I think it's somewhere in these documents, but we are going to early on work with the city so that the streetscapes and all that stuff doesn't end up being the last thing.
That we do.
Usually and traditionally, we get finished with everything, get finished with DSA, and then we kind of finish up with the city. We're going to do that early on. We've already been doing that a lot, and thanks to all of your staff, it's been a great process for us. So that's a part of it too, that we're going to do that intentionally so we can get done quickly. Also, I'm confident to say that we are within budget right now. We're doing very well with the budget, and so that makes my heart sing a little bit, being in charge and making sure that all happens.
Okay, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, it just makes my heart sing even more.
I know.
Well, I want to thank you for the work. I want to thank you for coming, presenting to us. I want to thank you for bringing this college to our city. And I know it's been a long time, but it's great to see it finally on a reality coming soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience and your support.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item is acceptance of the agenda. The City Council will discuss the order of the agenda, may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, or request consent calendar items be removed for a separate discussion. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Are there any items staff or a council member would like to remove from the consent calendar for separate discussion and/or vote?
Mr. Mayor, we would like to have item 1A removed for discussion.
Okay. Councilman Garner? Someone? Okay. So do we have a second? Oops, sorry. We have to entertain a motion first. Vote. Okay, passes 4-0. At this time, I invite City Attorney Jeff Ballinger to provide a report on the closed session.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the public, the City Council met in closed session earlier tonight to discuss the items that are listed on the closed session agenda, and there was no reportable action.
Okay, the next item is public testimony. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on non-public hearing agenda items only. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. You're asked to please begin your time by telling us what agenda item or items you are speaking about. Please note that testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the public hearing, and general public comments for subjects not on the agenda will be taken later in the evening. If there is a written comment that you wish to distribute to the City Council members, please hand it to the clerk. Our first speaker is Dominic Moonhart, followed by Brad Anderson.
Hello, council members and mayor. I just wanted to speak on the COD presentation. My opinions have changed after I seen the presentation, but I just wanted to just let COD know and the community know that technical theater within the Coachella Valley is important, and currently COD is not offering technical theater. And since there's an event space within the college, it'd be a benefit for our community to have technical theater. And I just also want to say technical theater is not construction. It's dramatically different from construction. We have Coachella Fest, we have Acrisure Arena, the convention center, and all the film festival. And there's no technical theater program here at COD. And Palm Springs, with the Palm Springs campus being constructed, that would be a really big benefit for the technical theater community. Because by law, you're supposed to have a certificate before doing technical theater. And that's all I have for my public comments. Thank you, and Happy New Year to all of you guys.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brad Anderson.
Good afternoon, evening. My name's Brad Anderson. I currently live in the city of Rancho Mirage. I wanted to speak on items with consent calendar 1A and 3B, I believe. I'll start with 1A. This is concerning the TRAM authority and the reappointment of 2 trustees or directors. I'm not sure what they are called up there, but that's one meeting I haven't ever been able to attend in the valley in my time that I've been living in the desert, just because I've been unable to accommodate or going up there anyway. But not that that's my point of my concern is looking through the staff report. These 2 directors, I'll call them directors, their term expires in September, I believe, of 2023. And if the staff could maybe comment of why they're being reappointed so long after the fact, that would be great for people like me that know some of the trustee or directors up there. So, and I'll just skip over to 1A. And if the notice was given to, that's a separate entity of the city, so I don't know how the notices how people would even know to apply for that position without having inside information or inside contacts. On 3B, that's concerning the license plate readers and security cameras possibly being used, or private entities like homeowners association or even neighborhoods buying those units and having them accessible to police or city staff. I would be opposed to that. I think if these neighborhood groups want that type of security or surveillance equipment, they need to gift resources to the city. And just because the liability factor, I would litigate against both the city and that private entity if anything happened that would be hopefully avoidable in the future. Thank you. Wow, that's good timing. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a card here for Martin Lucky Star Hilden, but it's not clear whether it's on an agenda item. Here? Okay. Is there any other public comment?
I have none.
None? Okay. The next item is the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar without item number 1A, which was removed for separate discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I can, I would just like to flag or ask staff to flag item 1L for the public if I can, because that's a big deal and it would be nice to talk about it publicly as before we just move on. So I'm going to vote yes and then just ask if we can, maybe city manager can just summarize that for the public.
Okay. You accepted. We'll start with, motion passes 4-0. On item 1A, city manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. On item 1A, staff, we wanted to ask council to just pull this item for a later date. We, looking at state law, I think because this is one of those external committees, it probably hasn't been identified properly on all the city's websites. We want to do that. Plus, it would give us an opportunity to do some extra outreach for the position. So if council would give us the benefit of just pulling this, and we'll bring it back at a later date.
Okay. And Councilmember Halsted, you had a question on 1L?
Chief Alvarado is here. Maybe he could say a little bit about the fire truck.
Thank you. This just seemed like a big moment to celebrate and have almost $6 million go unrecognized for the department and for the community to know about. I thought it would be a good moment to explain to the public. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity. Paul Alvarado, Palm Springs Fire Chief. And first of all, I'd like to thank the team effort that we had to put this before you for your vote. We have the Public Works Director here and his team, as well as the fire department, to put together the study for 3 new pieces of apparatus for fire engines and a new fire truck. So the current fleet that we have is 2018, and it's really exceeded its life expectancy for first-in apparatus. Some of the rigs are approaching 80,000 miles, and we're spending more money keeping those rigs running than really what the value of the apparatus is. So we're bringing before you our 3 new fire engines that'll go to our stations, as well as a fire truck. So very pleased to bring this forward to you, and thank you for your consideration in that. And it is a large purchase, but we plan on keeping those rigs in good condition and keeping them over the next 10 years. 5 years in service for frontline, and then 5 years for reserve apparatus.
Thank you. Really proud to support that. And I know a lot of firefighters will be very excited about this, and all the toddlers I saw at the open house day, including my son, will be very, very excited for the new fire trucks. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I appreciate your support.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is item 3A, which is a request for an approval of the Airport Master Plan Terminal Design for the Palm Springs International Airport. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Okay, so the action before you is the approval of the Airport Master Plan alternative recommended by airport staff and the Airport Commission for the terminal complex development and the consolidated rental car facility. In July of 2022, the council approved a scope of work for the Airport Master Plan, a 2-phase study, which included the first phase being the terminal complex, the second phase, the airside and landside development. In April 2023, the airport selected Mead & Hunt as the master plan consultant and commenced with the study. The airport assembled a working group created of the airport staff, city department heads representing sustainability, engineering, and IT, and the Airport Commission. In September 2023, the airport held a public open house, which was attended by over 160 people to discuss the terminal concepts. We also created a website with master plan updates and working papers, posted social media updates, surveys for community feedback, and at that meeting we presented 4 initial concepts that were presented to the public. And based on that feedback, we've now narrowed those concepts to two alternatives. In December 2023, we consulted with the corporate offices for the airport's 7 signatory airlines. Remember, there are 12 airlines for the airport, but 7 of them are signatory. Those airlines included Alaska, American, Delta, United, Air Canada, WestJet, and Southwest to obtain their feedback. They all provided feedback to the master plan working group, and that'll be presented to you tonight as well. And then on December 14th, 2024, the full Airport Commission considered the terminal development alternatives and voted 12-4 in favor of recommending alternative 1A to the City Council, which is what you have before you today. I wanted to highlight a couple of things in the master plan process before I turn it over to Ryan Hayes from Mead and Hunt. Airport master plans are a very prescribed process. The FAA kind of dictates exactly what we're supposed to look at in that process. The idea behind the master planning process is to manage the growth. As you know, we're very constrained at the airport right now, so we're trying to catch up to the constrained nature of the airport as it exists and forecast 20 years into the future for the growth of the airport. We're cognizant that the community is concerned about the Wexler Terminal, and we took that into consideration in this planning process, and you'll see that in the presentation tonight. And then when it comes to noise, we know that's an important issue for the community, and the airport's always working on noise issues. I just want to make the community aware the airports are not allowed to regulate the number of aircraft or the frequency by which aircraft use the airport. That was a congressional act in 1990 that kind of dictated that. There are a handful of airports in the United States that were grandfathered in before 1990. We're not one of them. However, we did include noise considerations in this planning process. Myself and Ryan Hayes will speak to that tonight as well. I also want the community to know that passenger growth is not necessarily reflective or equate to the doubling of aircraft. So just to make that clear, passenger growth doesn't necessarily follow that trend line. And what we're seeing in the industry right now are that aircraft are getting a lot larger and a lot quieter, and we'll speak to that a little bit as well. In the coming months, when it comes to noise, the airport will be giving some educational sessions to the community, whether it be via webinar or some type of in-person roundtable on noise. But beyond that, unless there are any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Hayes from Mead and Hunt.
Great, thank you, Harry. Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. I was in front of you back in October. It's a pleasure to be here again, and I just want to reiterate how professional the airport staff is at Palm Springs International Airport. It's also been a pleasure to work with your airport commission through this process. I've got a fairly detailed presentation. Mr. Mayor, if I'm going too long, just let me know. I've got about 30 minutes worth of slides. But Harry asked that we get a little bit more into the detail of the process and the schedule and how we got to where we are today. I'm going to share, as Harry said, a little bit about the public open house and the community outreach that we've done and the feedback that we have received. I'm going to go into some more detail about the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 terminal alternatives that were under consideration, alternatives 1A and 3. And then, if it's okay, I'd like to turn it over to Vice Chairman Corcoran of the Airport Commission to let you know what their recommendation is.
It's not a small project, so I think you can spend the time.
Okay, great, thank you. If it is going too long, just give me a wave. So the process, we showed you this slide, I believe, in October. We break the planning process into these 4 phases, 4 pillars, if you will. We are through the first 3 phases, so we've done the pre-planning, we've done the investigation, determined how big the facilities need to be to accommodate the demand. We've forecasted the demand. Column 3 then is the solutions phase when we come up with the alternatives. So what we're asking for you all to make a decision on today is a preferred alternative that moves us from phase 3 to phase 4. That 4th phase is the implementation phase of the planning process, where we develop a project list, we do cost estimates, we do detailed financial planning to figure out how to pay for all of these projects. We also do an airport layout plan that goes to the FAA, and we initiate the CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act process. So the decision we're asking you to make today on a preferred alternative does not commit the city of Palm Springs to anything. It just gives us permission to continue the planning process, move into the investigation stage. The schedule we developed, we started this project, we scoped it in January of last year. We started in February, so we're about 11 months in. We're hoping to do it in about 14 months. And that takes us to a draft master plan. That moves into the CEQA phase. The CEQA phase is going to be another 18 months following the draft. So the hope is that we have a draft master plan in April of this year, and we start the CEQA process and go through that 18-month planning process, which does include additional public outreach and public opportunity for comment. A little bit about what an airport master plan is and why we're doing it. It's very much a decision-making tool that guides orderly development of future airport facilities. We are not designing the terminal improvements in this process. We're simply planning, developing a roadmap for the airport, if you will, which is a terrible pun. It's also a very important tool for the FAA. They pay for 90% of this project because they get a couple things out of it. One, they get an airport layout plan that tells them that the Palm Springs International Airport is designed to meet their standards. It also gives them a heads up of what Harry and his team are going to be knocking on their door in terms of asking for grant funding to support in the future. So that's very important. That's why the FAA recommends airports do this every 10 years. The project also provides input to the environmental review, CEQA and NEPA, and it provides input to city and county land use planning and regional transportation planning. A couple of things that an airport master plan is not, just to be crystal clear, it's not a business plan or a marketing plan. The FAA considers those functions the airport sponsor's responsibility, and they want you to pay for them yourself. It's also not a noise study, although as Harry mentioned, in the CEQA process, we will define the aircraft flight tracks and develop noise contours and do a noise impact analysis. So we do take noise into consideration in the alternatives that we develop. But really a master plan is a physical development plan for the airport that reserves space for potentially needed facilities. The why, so that's the what. The why of why we're doing this is, as Harry mentioned, to accommodate the growth. And the growth is coming whether you build the facilities to accommodate that growth or not at the airport. The Palm Springs Airport rebounded from the pandemic much faster than almost any airport in the country. And it's almost like the pandemic has fueled growth in this valley, and so it is coming, and if you do not build facilities to accommodate it, that level of service provided to your passengers is just going to decrease over time. That's really the why. A couple other reasons why we're doing this are the bullets on the bottom of the slide. The FAA recommends that you do it. The industry is changing very quickly. As Harry mentioned, the fleet mix and the aircraft types and sizes are changing. Fortunately, they're also getting quieter. But we want to accommodate the new types of aircraft and the different types of aircraft. Lots and lots of changes in parking, rental car, TNCs. The airport just signed an agreement with a company called Turo, which you're probably familiar with. How folks get to and from airports is very dynamic, constantly changing. The potential for international flights was also a big scope item. And obviously accommodating FBOs, which is fixed base operators in general aviation, is important. I mentioned that the FAA recommends you do this every 10 years. The last master plan was done a little bit more than 10 years ago, and it was done with data in 2009, 2010, following the economic downturn, which resulted in some depression of demand in the aviation industry. This is a chart that shows all the forecast scenarios that were considered in that last master plan. The star is where you are in 2023. So the airport has exceeded the growth projections from the previous master plan by a long shot. That's where Harry has mentioned a couple of times that we're kind of behind the growth curve and we're trying to catch up. So the forecast that we developed as our master plan team for this project show the airport at about 1.5 million current enplanements. That's one passenger boarding a departing aircraft. So you have to double that number to get to total passengers. So the airport currently accommodates about 3 million passengers going through the terminal facilities per year. We forecast, as Harry mentioned, that to increase to over 6 million annual passengers by the end of the 20-year planning period. What does that mean in terms of gates? This airport is very, very unique in the seasonality and the amount of aircraft activity that happen in a 6-month period during the winter. There is a time in March, which is your busiest month, when there are 17 commercial aircraft on the ground at one time. So there's demand for 17 gates today, and we forecast that to increase to about 32 gates by the end of the planning period. So we've got to plan for more gates. We also have to plan for more square footage in the terminal. So the existing terminal facilities are about 300,000 square feet. And this is a fairly linear projection with the forecast growth. We're showing a need for over 600,000 square feet of terminal space. So we took all of that information. We started with an inventory of your existing facilities. The map on the left shows the airport's location in proximity to the interstate and downtown Palm Springs. The map on the right is the existing terminal facilities. We often refer to the head house, which is the Wexler Terminal building, as the primary terminal. And then the concourses, the Bono Concourse and the Regional Jet Concourse, are the areas where passengers connect with their aircraft. So this airport essentially operates 2 existing concourses. This is an opportunities and constraints map, opportunities being in green, constraints in red. I'll just give you a couple for examples on this slide. The air traffic control tower at the airport is a fairly new facility. So that's a constraint. We don't want to move the tower. An example of an opportunity is there's a parcel just to the south of Kirk Douglas Way, in between Kirk Douglas Way and Ramon, that is currently undeveloped open space that we've identified as potentially acquisition for the airport to accommodate additional vehicle parking. So these opportunities and constraints kind of set the bookends for what we look at for alternatives in this planning process. So we took all that information, we took all the feedback we've gotten from the working group and the Airport Commission, and we developed these first initial alternatives. The first approach in 1A and 1B is kind of a maximum reuse. We reuse existing facilities to the greatest extent we can, and we also expand them. In approach 2, it's kind of a partial reuse where the Wexler head house is repurposed or maintained, but we redesign the concourses. And then in approach 3, it's essentially a brand new terminal on the south side of the envelope. So those were the initial alternatives. These are what was shared with the community in September at the open house. Just some stats on the open house. We had 160 people attend and sign in. The way that the open house was advertised is all of these bullets here. We had an online public comment period following that open house. We had 373 views of the airport master plan website. The display boards were downloaded over 400 times, and we had 312 total site users, or 912 total site users, 875 who had not visited the website before the open house. So we definitely drove traffic to the website. We felt like we had really good attendance at the open house. Of the folks who participated in the comment period, I guess we had 500 people engage with the alternatives information online, and then we had about 42 surveys received, so about 8% of the folks who engaged with the information on the website provided us with some feedback. So the 4 alternatives on the left, and we asked folks quite simply to indicate their preference for 1A, 1B, 2, and 3. We had the most folks rank either their first preferred alternative or second preferred alternative as alternative 1A, the first line in this bar chart. Harry also mentioned that we shared this information with the airlines, and the airlines also voted unanimously for alternative 1A. This is a terrible slide with really small text, but everything on this chart is screening criteria, including sustainability criteria that we use to rank and evaluate these alternatives. And in this screening process, alternative 1A also came out as favored. So now just a little bit of information about the 2 narrowed alternatives that Harry mentioned. So alternative 1A really is maintain existing facilities, renovate them, and expand them to the greatest extent you can. Alternative 3 is start over with a brand new terminal on the south side. This is the full build concept for alternative 1A. Essentially, you see aircraft on the entire development parcel. This is fully built out. You probably would never get to this point in the 20-year planning period. So what we did with both alternative 1A and alternative 3 is we broke them into 4 phases of most likely construction. So phase 1 of alternative 1A is shown on this graphic. The orange rectangle to the north of the terminal area is a consolidated rental car facility. That would be a multi-level, potentially as many as 5 stories for consolidated rental car parking. The feedback that we got from passengers and from tenants of the building and from the airlines is that folks really like the convenience of the car rental location to baggage claim. And so we maintain that in this concept with the location of the con rack. The parking facilities stay the same, but what's new is an additional terminal concourse to the north with 7 narrow body gates, as well as a federal inspection facility to accommodate international flights, and some renovation to baggage claim areas. So that's phase 1 of alternative 1A, and then phase 2 would build to the south. So now you've got your Bono concourse in the middle, your north concourse is constructed, and now you can work to the south. The Wexler head house is expanded to the south, and the regional jet concourse is essentially converted into a more traditional narrow body concourse with jet bridge gates. And then phases 3 and 4 just continue to expand that southern concourse all the way out to the taxiway. Lots of advantages to 1A. I won't go through each one, but some of the biggest are it's lower in cost, and particularly phase 1 is lower in cost, and getting a federal inspection facility online, as well as a con rack online, as well as new gates, can likely happen faster in alternative 1A than it can in 3. Some of the disadvantages of 1A are there are some long walking distances for the concourses, and so it would be good to task the designers of this terminal with consideration of some moving walkways, probably. The alternative also maintains the Wexler head house, which is a beautiful building, but it's a 1960s vintage building that requires some significant renovations, some new pipes, but it's also an opportunity to bring back some of the architectural features of that original terminal. There would be some challenging issues for Harry and his team to address during construction. There is no doubt the very first when you build the Conrack is how do you deal with rental car passengers during construction? And that would likely be shuttling off-site. So there would be some busing of rental car passengers. That's obviously an operational challenge. There could also be operational challenges in getting passengers from hold rooms to their aircraft during construction. So that's 1A. That's the first refined alternative. The second refined alternative is really the brand new alternative. So this is alternative 3. You can see the Wexler head house is maintained in this alternative, but it is not used for airport terminal functions. That would be for the city to decide how to repurpose that facility. This is the full build out of alternative 3. The Conrack is again the orange rectangle. It is located where existing public parking is today. The head house is the purple facility built basically parallel to Kirk Douglas Way, and then there's essentially 3 different concourses for aircraft and jet bridges. The first phase, and this was really one of our, this alternative looked great when we first came up with it, but then when we said how do we phase it, we're trying to get 20 gates on day 1, and so you almost have to build all of alternative 3 in the first phase. So that makes it much, much more expensive. The first phase of alternative 1A, including the Conrack, is about $900 million. The Conrack's about $335 million of that. The first phase of alternative 3 of this alternative is over $2 billion, so it makes it much more challenging to figure out a funding plan for. All the next phases of this alternative, the second phase basically removes the Bono concourse to allow for a taxi lane, and then the center concourse is expanded in phase 3, and then in phase 4, the southern or the western concourse is expanded. So those are the 4 phases of 3. I mentioned some of the advantages. Again, the advantage of building brand new facilities while you operate out of your existing facility is certainly an advantage from a constructability standpoint and minimizing disruptions to your passengers during construction. Another advantage is the potential to reimagine what the Wexler terminal could be. If that's a community facility, if that's a museum, there's lots of opportunity there, so that's another advantage. Disadvantages of alternative 3 are fairly significant as well, the cost being the most significant probably. Another issue with phase 1 is that you essentially have 18 gates today. If you include the walkout gates at the regional jet, when you open phase 1 of alternative 3, you would have 20 total gates. So you're only getting a net increase of 2 gates for all of that money. So that's just a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages. This was a slide we added in response to a comment we got about the Conrack and the potential to have it. Does it have to be immediately adjacent to the terminal? And the answer is no. You've all been to airports where you get on a shuttle bus and the shuttle bus takes you to a Conrack that's located somewhere nearby and you get your rental car there. There are some places in the vicinity of the airport that could accommodate a Conrack. We show them in these 4 blue boxes, a couple far to the north on property the airport doesn't own. There's one on the west or on the east side of the airport on property the airport does own, and there's also that open piece of property just south of Kirk Douglas Way that could also potentially accommodate a Conrack. So that's always an option. So just to summarize, these are the 2 best options we came up with to accommodate the demand, and we also looked at one of the comments we got from the Airport Commission was, can you build one of these 2 alternatives faster than the other? And it's a hard question to answer because there's a whole lot of factors that go into it, but we think that 1A could potentially be built and online slightly quicker than alternative 3. There's a lot of steps to go through post-master plan, including a NEPA analysis, program definition, design and permitting, and then construction. So I don't want to steal your thunder, Commissioner Corcoran, but the staff recommendation and commission recommendation is alternative 1A. And we've also got some renderings. These are very high-level renderings. This terminal has not been designed, but we did do some 3D renderings just to help folks visualize mostly the Conrack, given the proximity to El Cielo. So that's one view. This is another view looking to the east. You get a little bit of sense of scale with the air traffic control tower and the Conrack located right in front of the tower as to how tall it would be. We've also looked at what it would cost to go underground a level or potentially 2 levels with the Conrack to minimize that visual impact. It's about a 15% increase to the cost each level you go down, but it certainly is feasible. So thank you for letting me share that. I'm happy to answer questions, but I think I'd like to turn it over to Vice Chairman Corcoran.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, City Council people, I'm excited to come and just provide a little color commentary. Thank you, on Ryan's presentation, to give you a sense of the Commission's process in getting here and some of the key points that really turned the Commission towards this recommendation. As Ryan mentioned, we've been part of this process for several months. A group of commissioners were part of the ad hoc group looking at every stage of the long-term planning process. And we did this presentation for the full commission on the 6th of December. And we looked at the pros and cons of both of them, and we were stuck. It was 7-6. We were right down the middle about commissioners supporting 1A, commissioners supporting 3. And so we decided that we would take another 2 weeks before our meeting on the 14th, our official meeting on the 14th, to ask several more questions, get a lot more information about the details behind both of these options. So here are some of the key considerations that we felt that led us to support 1A. And by the way, the vote on the 14th was 12-4. I think Ryan mentioned that. The first thing that was most persuasive was the speed to new gates and the speed to international facilities. 1A, in phase 1 of 1A, we talk about the 7 new gates to the north. The ability to build that section along with the Conrack and get to that between 3.5 and 5 years was probably the most persuasive thing. To get to Plan 3 will take 6.5 years, just to get to those 20 gates in version 3 that was in phase 1 of that. And as Ryan said, you have to build the whole thing, and it's very, very costly. For less than $1 billion, we can get 7 more gates, but most importantly, we can get international FIS facilities, and we can start international service. This factor was really key to the folks at Greater Palm Springs. They and our chairman, Aftab Dada, are really concerned about our ability to pull international flights into Palm Springs, not only from Mexico, which is an obvious candidate, but from other locations, London, Copenhagen, Dublin, who've expressed interest in doing this. So this option gets us more gates and helps us to ease some of the congestion we have, but also allows us to get to international service faster. There was and also connected to this, Ryan mentioned it, we are bursting at the seams right now. So the opportunity to get to these new gates faster will allow us to improve the customer experience overall. We thought that was a key factor in supporting this feature over 3. We really need to expand the size of our airport. There was a lot of discussion about the Wexler building, and any time the Wexler is mentioned, there's a great deal of passion in our community. People who are passionate about preservation and specifically about this particular building had lots and lots of emotion around the importance of keeping this. When we looked at option 3, the Wexler building became an orphan. And there was a lot of discussion, well, we could make it an art museum, we could do this or that. But there was a great deal of discomfort about the future of that building if it was not connected to the airport as it was proposed in option 3. So building this plan, keeping the Wexler, as Ryan said, being able to improve, perhaps go back to some of the original design concepts as part of this build-out, was another factor that led us to move towards 1A. Big tipping point at the end, which I think moved a lot of the commission people, members, was the cost. 1A fully developed right now is forecast at $2.2 billion. If we build a brand new airport, it's about 2.8. And again, a lot of that would have to be upfronted, more than $2 billion, just to get to the first phase. We were pleased that the airlines supported the commission's recommendation as well. Unanimously, they wanted 1A. We thought that was important. And the only sticking point of all of this was the CONRAC. When we first saw this and heard that it was going to be 5 stories, anything over 3 stories in Palm Springs is always a question mark here. And so the heft and the size of that was something that was a concern. And of course, having supported to keep the Wexler and to build off either side of the Wexler, we thought, what happens to the views when you walk outside of the front of the airport? I think the commission came full circle on this. When you walk out of the door and look at the mountains, all right, imagine a 5-story building. The building is far out of your view. It's out of the main V, if you would, of the airport as it's designed. So I think there was less concern about that. We did challenge Ryan and his team to consider what it would take to bury 2 stories and go down 2 stories with that. As he said, it's another 30%. It still is something that could be a consideration with us moving forward. So I think we came full circle around the CONRAC. If we could bury it 2 stories, that'd be great. But I don't think it is going to have the visual impact coming out of the airport that we thought it was originally. And it's something when you come out the next time, take a look and imagine. The last thing is the operational challenges. Anything we do this airport is going to create operational challenges, and it's going to affect our customer experience. Our sense is that people today who travel who go into airports that are in major construction projects are used to the process of what it takes to move around as an airport is developed. Best example of that would be LaGuardia. When you saw how that project grew over 5 years and how they managed the construction of that project while maintaining the operations, we think that our passengers and our guests, considering the benefits that they'll get from this long term, are going to be able to manage the operations, the operational challenges. We certainly think the staff, our airport staff, will do it as well. So those are the key considerations that brought the commission to a 12-4 vote in supporting 1A. Thanks.
Okay, is there any more of the presentation?
No, that's all we have. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Okay, is there any discussion or additional questions from council? Councilmember Middleton?
I'm sure there'll be a lot. All right. I'm looking at 1A, the full build. At the time you fully build this out, is all of the baggage claim over there at the north end of the building?
Baggage claim, yes. And
so how are you going to move baggage from the airplanes over to that baggage claim facility that seems to be around?
Yes. So good question. The new light blue concourse shown to the north, it would be a second level concourse. So very similar to how you access the Bona concourse, there would be a set of escalators that take you up, and that would be a second level concourse. The baggage carts would move underneath that concourse back and forth from baggage claim to the aircraft.
It still looks like a very long distance that would take quite a bit of time, but help me with that.
Distance from baggage claim to
distance from where
the new concourse?
People are going to exit the plane, that the baggage has to move from the plane to baggage claim.
Yeah, I can weigh in on that. So I don't see much of a change in terms of our ability to deliver bags in under 20 minutes, which is what most airlines strive for. And really, we have an opportunity here to update our technology, add in some innovation to make that process faster. So I don't see that really changing in this particular scheme.
As I look at 1A, it does look to be the preferred route. I really appreciate saving not only the Wexler building, but saving that incredible view that individuals have as they come off the Bono concourse and as they come out the front door of the terminal. What really worries me are a few things. We are already, in terms of ground transportation, absolutely at packed. And I'm seeing a whole lot more vehicles and cars on existing ground transportation right there in front of the terminal that I don't know how we're going to manage that.
We did consider that in the process, and there are a couple of schools of thought on that. So the first is, as time goes on, passenger trends tend to change. And the idea of utilizing public transportation a little bit more was a thought going into this process. We envision that when it comes to getting people back and forth, that the rental car facility, in theory, could operate as a flex facility, an intermodal transportation facility, where there would be busing operations, taxis, streetcar. We obviously can't do any planning for the rest of the region in terms of transportation, but we are willing to incorporate that into the airport environment.
So the part of this project that gives me the greatest amount of pause is the rental car facility and where it's located, both in terms of the massing next to what is an existing business district and then neighborhood, but also the amount of traffic that's going to put on El Cielo and Tahquitz Canyon and streets that were not designed for this level of traffic, which is why I raised the question about the alternatives of something away from the terminal that obviously would need to be accessed by buses, but I'm not ready to go forward with the rental car facility in the fashion that it is now without fully exploring what would be some alternatives for using shuttle buses to connect to the rental car facility and having that in a location either closer to Ramon Road or Gina Autry that are main arterial roads that could more easily handle it, as well as visually from a site standpoint, having a facility of that size. My other concern is that from a parking standpoint, we are going to need to expand dramatically the number of parking spaces, and the only way to do that is to add shuttle buses to move people from the parking facilities to the main airport. If we're bringing shuttles in for that, shouldn't we be looking at them potentially for the rental car facility as well? And if we don't have that rental car facility located at the north end, that leaves land that allows us to expand the ground transportation network for that area. So I'm not arguing any of those are necessarily the solution, but I think I need to hear a little bit more exploration of those alternatives before I could support this plan as it is here. I really like that the airport opens on this plan to the view west of the mountains. I think if we go in the other direction of option C and have the main view for people arriving to be to the south. It's a beautiful view. I like looking at it out my home to the south, but the south doesn't compete with the western view. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Holstage?
Thank you. I'm a little intimidated because you were so brief. That like summarized it very, very well, but it's very brief, and I don't have that skill. I completely agree with your comments, so thank you for that. I also share the concern about the rental car facility. And I will say thank you to Harry, and thank you for the presentation and your leadership for the airport. Thank you to our commission and our vice chair. Such an exciting time. Harry, it might not feel like it, but I was just thinking about you today, and what an amazing opportunity to really transform and rethink and plan for the future of the airport. One of the best little airports in the world, and one of these places that is just expecting growth and growth. So what an amazing time to be planning for our future. I will ask that we avoid the acronyms. So I had to ask today what CONRAC means. So thank you, rental car facility. Always, I know that you are steeped in this, but remember you're talking to our residents who know rental car facility. And I was going to ask, what is headspace? Is that where passengers are?
Head house is
house.
Just a common term in the industry for the main portion of the terminal that accommodates ticketing, baggage claim, security, but not the concourses.
Thank you. So if I could just ask for the next presentations, if you really can do it at a level where the lay average person can understand the terms. So I agree with Councilmember Middleton's comments. Thank you. I agree about the problems with the rental car facility, how close it is to the Wexler building, the massing and scale, if it's kind of impacting the view corridors or the views or even that architectural building. I also would like to pursue other options and what that could look like. I also share the concern about public transit and just transit in general, especially because transit is changing so rapidly, we hope, and we are moving away from cars and parking, and hopefully very soon we will have self-driving cars that will drop us off at the airport and then go drive back home. Things like that. You laugh, but that is a real possibility in 20 years. I know someone asked us for a monorail to go from the airport to downtown, and if I had $1 billion, I would build that, absolutely. But like to actually think through real ways that the airport can integrate into a future public transit system that we hope is a lot more robust. Do you have a comment on that? I know staff had originally looked at transit options, but I'd love to like really have that fleshed out more in depth. I know you had talked about a intermodal facility and you have that incorporated, but I'd love for that to be more in depth to consider, less reliance on parking lots and parking of cars.
I'll comment on that very briefly. So a couple things. Large part of our revenue stream on the airport side comes from public parking.
Yes,
and
I
so
know.
that is something that we would need to address in reducing public parking. And I'm not saying that we're opposed to that. That's just a factor that we would need to consider in that process. The other thing I'll say is we did start this master plan with scope to be a sustainable master plan with the idea that over time an intermodal transportation facility basically we would become a transportation hub versus just an airport. And I think I still have that vision in mind. How we get there, that's a discussion to be had, and I think that's gonna be a lot more detailed discussions with the regional transportation planners to figure out how that works. But we believe that that can happen here, and you'll probably see some of that in our airside alternatives too, where we're planning for the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to see that and really think through the future as a transit hub as we get regional rail and we have, a bullet train to Vegas and all of these things that actually we are planning for, making sure that we're part of that. And I'm not suggesting reducing the paid parking in the plan, but just that we are more thoughtful in integrating into as a transit hub. I have questions just about, so this is obviously the design and the choice that we're making for the master plan design, but I do have questions about like funding, and so like practical questions. I see the difference in the cost of the two options, but are there differences in how they're funded or how easily they're funded?
So we have a number of funding mechanisms, and I'll start by saying that right now the airport doesn't rely on the general fund, so we don't take any taxpayer money. We're pretty much self-sufficient. We earn our own revenues, and we have a number of funding mechanisms to address some of these improvements. It's really going to be a strategy that we flesh out over the next few years. Mead and Hunt's going to help us with that effort. In fact, their next task is to actually go through a financial feasibility study. But between on-airport generated revenues, leaseholds, grants, the potential for a public-private partnership, things like that, we have opportunities to mix and match to get the funding there.
Thank you, and I'd love to, I know that's the work to come, but I'd love to see that happen so we can have that context as we're moving forward here to understand how we're going to be funding some of these pieces. Especially, I know we need to work with our federal representatives and, do that advocacy work and all the important work with the airlines and all of that to talk about financing and funding. I have a question just about overall stakeholder engagement. So I know thank you for all the work that you did on that. I know you had open houses and that was really successful. Normally I ask, was that done in Spanish? Was there like diverse representation? I know you had like 33 survey responses, but it'd be great, to see what we need to do to really make sure we're having diverse stakeholder engagement, and how representative that is of users of the airport and also future users of the airport, because we want that input. For design, so are we mimicking, is the plan and thought to mimic the design of the Wexler building and that like mid-century modern architecture? Could you speak a little bit to the design? That's a question we get a lot.
Sure, we're a little bit premature in that. This is all supposed to be conceptual level. However, once we get to the point where we need to design something, we certainly will take in the components of the Wexler building and incorporate those into the expansion of the facility.
Between the two options, is there a difference in terms of which is more amenable to, obviously the one incorporates the Wexler building in a much more significant way, so that would lend towards 1A as an option.
Correct.
Thank you. Yeah, I think overall I support alternative 1A. It sounds like that's the best opportunity for us. I'm really excited for the opportunity for international flights and expanding that more quickly. That's what we hear again and again from our CVB and others and residents about the need to expand that. And I share the concerns that were raised just about accessibility and baggage claim and the user experience. But I appreciate all of the work that you've done so far. I know this is just the beginning of a more detailed planning process. So thank you for the presentation and all the work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do you have? Okay. Well, thank you for all those great questions. You covered a lot, and I kind of think we might have flying cars too at some point, so we got to accommodate. But anyway, I have a question. Councilmember Holstage brought up our best little airport. Why don't we just not expand at all and keep our best little airport the way it is?
Well, I'll let Ryan speak to that a little bit, but the short answer to that is the airlines, as mentioned, the airlines are going to continue to come, and they're going to continue to bring people. And what eventually happens is if we choose a no-action course is the airlines will just figure out a way to spread out that activity throughout the course of the day. So right now we have 3 peaks throughout the day for the airport. One that starts at about 5:30 a.m. and goes to 7:30 a.m., another that starts at about 11 a.m. And holds on until about 2 p.m. And then the third peak is right around 6 p.m. when we have a bunch of overnight arrivals. And that's the reason for that is because we're Spoke Airport, so you have a bunch of connecting flights to a bunch of connecting hubs. Now, what would in theory happen is if we had more flights, more passengers, we didn't expand the facility without gates, those flights would spread out throughout the day, and you'd have this constant nonstop at the airport throughout a 24-hour period. The facilities would become more and more congested. In terms of the passenger services, those would diminish. So you would probably see up to an hour waits for food, things like that. Restrooms are going to become an issue. They're already an issue where you'd have to wait 10, 15 minutes to get into a restroom. So these are all impactful to the passenger experience. And these are all things that we need to focus on today and address today in building out the future of the airport.
Okay, great. And you mentioned 24 hours, so potentially if they need to find slots, they could go later at night or early in the morning, and we have no control?
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you. And the numbers that you have forecast for future use, is that, did anyone else review, did the FAA review that, or is that?
Yes, that's a good question. The FAA does approve and bless those forecasts. They're one of two things they approve in this master plan, the forecast and the airport layout plan. We do have that approval in hand. We also coordinated that forecast very closely with Visit Greater Palm Springs, and it seems to align with their projections for growth in the valley.
Okay, and do you have any idea out of the 3.2 million passengers, what percentage is locally originated?
We took a look at that. The only way that we can estimate that is by looking at the zip code that the airline ticket origination ticket was purchased in, and about 31% of the tickets in, I believe it was the last calendar year, originated in Palm Springs. So it's roughly 31% local passengers versus
In Palm Springs or throughout the valley?
It's throughout the valley.
Okay.
So the whole zip code of the valley, not just Palm Springs.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry. Could I just butt in with a question really quick? When you were talking about the expansion and the flights becoming 24 hours a day, can you just explain to the public why the five of us can't just say, sorry, you can't fly your plane in at 2 a.m.? Because I think that's the part that's missing for the public.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
we can, sorry to jump in.
So I spoke a little bit about the Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990 in my introduction. And what that act essentially says, what it essentially did back in the 1990s, was it removed the ability of local jurisdictions and airports to control the flights that come in into and out of an airport. You have a number of airports, a handful of airports in the United States, some in California, some in Florida, that before that act was implemented, they applied noise restrictions, they applied curfews, things like that, to manage the growth and to manage the noise in the airport. Congress determined that that impacted interstate commerce and decided to implement a Noise and Capacity Act to prevent that. So we're unable as a local jurisdiction or an airport to tell an airline or any aircraft operator that they can fly into and out of an airport.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councilmember Gardner, for raising that. So we basically have no say in when the airlines fly, and the same with military, I presume, same. And what about private planes? We don't
It's the
have-
same with private aircraft as well.
Okay. When you talked about the growth over the years, I know it's hard to figure out what the locally originated. Is that growing the same as the tourist? You know?
I don't have a sense for that. I can take an IOU and see if we have data that shows that.
It would be interesting to know, because some of the residents who I hear from who don't want the growth are also recent transplants or have lived here more and probably traveling more, like myself. So the other question, in the wide body planes that we're going to be able to have, we can't accommodate those now?
You can accommodate them now. to some extent. You don't have jet bridges that are currently sized for those aircraft, but you could have air stairs. What you don't have is a federal inspection facility to process international flights.
Right.
And the staff and facilities that go with it.
When you go to common language, it's also really helpful to say customs facilities, because that's how
Yes,
customs and
customs,
immigration is how
exactly. Yes.
everybody understands it, even though I realize it's not the technical term. Also, for the flights that we have now, do you know what percentage capacity they're at?
Yes, I just checked the other day, and they're operating right around 70% capacity.
So
on
as
average.
part of the growth, which obviously has to be able to handle people, do you see that capacity increasing, which doesn't mean more flights, or?
I do see that capacity increasing. Yes.
Okay, so it's not, it doesn't necessarily correlate to the same the number of increase in passengers doesn't necessarily correlate to the number of increase in flights, either because you have larger planes or greater capacity.
That's correct.
Okay. You mentioned this in the report, the time frame to get the end of phase one. You said 3.5 to 5 years from the end of the master plan?
Right. So as Ryan mentioned, there are a number of factors in that. One major factor for us in Alternative 1A is that the northern terminal development would require us to take one of our fixed base operators, the individuals that handle our private aircraft and our fueling for the airlines, and relocate them on the airfield. So in addition to the environmental process, we would have to work with one of the fixed-based operators to design a new terminal for them, as well as figure out what to do with their fuel farm and relocate that operation to another part of the airfield. Then we could pursue our own expansion if we so chose.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the increase, the 15% per floor for the rental car facility to go below ground, so 2 floors would be 30%. What is the 30% of that building? Do you have a specific cost of that building? It's not 30% of the whole project, is it? The increase in cost?
It's 30% per floor, so I want to say the Conrac cost estimate was about $335 million, and that was for 5 levels, so if you divide that by 5, it would be a 15% increase per level that you go down.
Okay, so it's a significant amount.
Yes.
It's not just, okay, I got that. The number of rental cars that the rental car facility would be able to hold, do you know what that is?
Yes, it's roughly sized for approximately 2,200 spaces, and that's a combination of rental car ready spaces, rental car return spaces, and some rental car storage. That does not accommodate all of our projected rental car demand, so there would still have to be some off-site storage, just like there is today.
Okay. And how many rental car spaces do we have now? Do you know? Just trying to get an idea how much increase in rental car traffic that is.
So in the ready lot, I believe there are somewhere around 375 spaces. However, as Ryan mentioned, we have, in terms of storage in the inventory, rental cars are pretty much parked all over the airport, and being, we've basically taken some areas and converted them to rental car storage spaces.
And I guess my question is, I understand that we're doing that, is what's the increase in the number of rental cars? Are we going from 300 to 2,000? Are we going from 1,000, 1,500 to 2,000?
No, we have we have the same number, we'll have the same number of rental cars, and it's really going to be dependent on just the demand at the terminal. So that fluctuates throughout the year. For example, the rental car companies over the summer will take their cars and truck them to other locations so that they can rent them elsewhere. But depending on our growth, that's what determines the inventories that the rental cars keep here.
Okay. I think it would be helpful to get a little bit more details when we talk about the increase in traffic that's going to be on Talkowitz and LCLO. Is that going to be exponentially terrible, or is it just because it's more frequent?
That's a good question. I'd also like to just mention that as part of the CEQA process, we're scoped in this master plan to do a traffic impact analysis. So That impact analysis would look at El Cielo, it would look at Tacuache, it would look at Ramon, it would look at each of those intersections and determine if this forecasted increase in demand is going to cause any of those intersections to fail, in which case we've got to come up with proposed solutions to those.
Okay, and you potentially have a couple new traffic lights in there, right?
Correct.
Okay. You talked about the possibility of moving walkways, but isn't it almost as this kind of growth a necessity? I mean, we have an older population, we have people with mobility issues, and already even just going to the regional, as some people have found it far.
Yes, it is a necessity. So fortunately, we have an airport where the walking distances are quite short and it's pretty easy to get around, but you're correct. If we do grow the facility, it is almost a necessity, or it is a necessity to have moving walkways or some type of people mover to get people around.
Okay. I appreciate Commissioner Corcoran's discussion about an orphan building of the Wexler, and I agree wholeheartedly. When you have historic buildings that are restored and without a real purpose, they can often become dilapidated again. But I would like to see the Wexler building really restored to what its original design. If you have those pictures, it was glorious in a way to how you entered Palm Springs, and it really reflected a lot of the indoor-outdoor and the lifestyle, and just in the way it was designed, it would be great to see that come back. That's obviously crowded now. You mentioned in the disadvantages, you're not sure about where the USO and Custom and Border Protection facilities. Do you have any idea where they would go to?
Not right now. That would come in the phasing plan. So once we started digging into the architectural part of the architectural and planning part of developing a terminal, we would explore those options. But realistically, for those operations, there would likely be some type of trailer or some type of double wide support to temporarily accommodate that until we could get them moved into a permanent location. For the USO, it's envisioned that the USO would move in terminal, and so that's a pretty easy fix. For Customs and Border Protection, right now our Customs and Border Protection agent, the sole one we have on the airport, is strictly dedicated to general aviation flights, so we would have to come up with a general aviation facility to accommodate that.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, we don't want to lose that USO. I want to just go back to the noise, because I'm in District 2, and it's particularly a noisy area for the airport. So you mentioned the newer planes are less noisy than what we have now. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's primarily advances in engine technology. There are some advances in airframe that make the aircraft a little bit quieter on approach and departure, but primarily it's been the newer aircraft that both Airbus and Boeing are producing have newer engines with technology it's just a lot quieter.
Okay. And do you have any ability to control flight paths, or so that it's?
That's a complicated answer. The short answer is no, but I do have the ability to work with the FAA and try to persuade them to amend those flight paths. So what happens in aviation is aircraft that are on the ground, I have the authority over. Anything, once it's wheels up, I have no authority. It belongs to the FAA. So the airport and the FAA work hand in glove on that issue.
So I've heard the good neighbor policy. Does that apply to commercial, or is that just military, or how does
It applies to everyone that flies in and out.
Okay, so it is rational that we could go and say our city is expanded, and we have areas now that are more populated than they were, and we may want to look at flight paths.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate all this work. I know this has been going on a long time. One other question. We're not going to lose, the Air Museum is not going to lose out on this expansion. Is that right? We still have their lease
Correct.
for now?
Correct.
Okay.
There's no plan to reduce their footprint.
Okay. And the last thing you mentioned in phasing allows you to stop if there's a change in the economic or another pandemic or something terrible happens, is there any possibility that it would stop mid-construction? Or you just don't go to phase 2 or 3, 4?
We just wouldn't go to phase 2 or 3 or 4. It is unlikely, and I would say probably no. There would be no situation that I can think of where we would stop mid-construction.
Okay, that's important. Well, I agree. I think one question, you said the Airport Commission and the airlines all preferred 1A. What about the airport staff?
The airport staff preferred 3, but that's because we like nice, pretty airports. We like nice new things.
Okay. And I know Councilmember Holstridge brought this up. When do we start seeing what design elements look like? Because that can make a big difference in how this works in our community.
We have a bit to go on that. So what happens after this process is once the council votes and a preferred alternative is selected, that needs to be sent off to the FAA. The FAA has to actually approve what's called an airport layout plan, basically giving the airport the go-ahead to develop the facility. That's when we would start to look at the architectural elements of anything that's constructed. However, a couple weeks ago, the council approved on-call contracts for the airport. One of those contracts is to work on signage and development standards for the airport so that we have clear guidance on how we need to develop the facility.
Okay, and I hope they do consult with our community. We have a very strong design and architectural, that actually could really help a lot as well. And also just in general with this process to have, significant resident and stakeholder interaction, because I know we talked about coming back, but throughout the process, the more information, the more chance that people have to know what's going on, the better. And also the less, the more they understand what's going on. I think it would be helpful. So I appreciate this. Is there any other questions or comments?
I was going to make a motion.
Motion? Did you have a comment, Councilman Gardner? No.
I was going to do the same, so.
Make a motion to approve moving forward with alternative 1A, but to request that staff come back to us with alternatives for the rental car facility to be explored, that staff come back to us with a description of the ground transportation and access to the terminals and facilities with options for us to consider, and that staff come back to us with alternatives regarding land that may need to be acquired in order to be able to accommodate all of the facilities that are going to be needed over the course of the lifetime of this project.
We have a motion by Councilmember Middleton, a second by Councilmember Holstridge. And it passes 4-0. Thank you very much. We appreciate all the work, and also to Commissioner Corcoran and the entire Airport Commission and staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next the next item on the agenda is item 3B, which is a discussion on the security cameras, automatic license plate readers purchased and controlled by private entities. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. It's about a month ago or so, the City Council directed staff to bring back a discussion regarding license plate readers specifically purchased by private entities and what control the city may have on both private property and or on city property, and really what direction to go from there. Flock currently has a few models. One of those is Flock can contract with the police department as well as neighborhoods specifically for their license plate reader cameras. neighbors or neighborhoods can pay those flock for those flock cameras, and they can either retain sole access, they can provide the police department with sole access, or they can share that access. Neighborhoods who and again, let me back up. They can give the police department sole access, and they would not have access to that data. A little bit of the background in the city of Palm Springs. Security cameras, regular security cameras, Ring, ADT, anything like that, are installed across the city in various neighborhoods and installed on numerous homes. These cameras are owned by residents and homeowners associations or neighborhood groups, and currently are not subject to any type of city regulation. Control and access to the footage from these residential and HOA security cameras are managed by individual homeowners or the respective homeowners associations. And current placement of these cameras is restricted exclusively to private properties. There's a lot of current interest in the city. Several neighborhoods and businesses have expressed an interest in having the flock license plate reader cameras, which could be under the surveillance of Palm Springs PD. There is one particular neighborhood who has acquired 2 cameras, and they're currently in a permitting process for the city of Palm Springs, and they're waiting. Those are on hold until there's further discussion by City Council. There's some current considerations here. One of those is creating a city ordinance that dictates the regulation of surveillance cameras intended for placement on public land. We want to discuss whether or not there's a need to contemplate regulations for surveillance cameras, or if we can, within the HOAs or neighborhood areas. And then propose and establish formal MOUs between the neighborhoods, HOAs, and the police department for access and monitoring of those cameras and the software system. Again, so the issue of concern here that we're seeing is we have a neighborhood group currently that wants to place 2 of these license plate reader cameras in their neighborhoods, but need to do it and encroach on city property. So the question before council would be whether or not to allow that. Is there any consideration? Some of the recommendations by the police department could, we obviously have concerns of privacy and who has control to access. The types of data or the types of information that these private entities can gather is simply just the images within the cameras they paid for, and that does not give them access to anything else if they were to retain access and viewing privileges to the cameras they paid for. The possibility does exist to potentially regulate if a neighborhood wants to pay for these cameras and they do encroach on city property, that a possibility exists that we would ask them to give up access and give sole access to the monitoring of those cameras to the police department. This unburdens the city from the cost of each of those cameras that are in the area. It helps in our crime prevention efforts and increases our surveillance capabilities in certain neighborhoods if they choose to put them there. But again, that's going to be that's a question for council before us. That's all I have.
You have councilmember comments or discussion? Councilmember Gardner.
Why are they putting up these cameras?
This particular neighborhood, and I think one of the representatives is here tonight, they might be able to speak. They've had concerns with a lot of crime encroaching into the neighborhood. They've had several vehicle burglaries. They've had some residential burglaries, and they're looking for additional crime prevention methods that might be able to help the police department solve some of those crimes.
And this would be the neighborhood allowing the police department to have full control of these cameras?
Correct.
Okay. But there's also other neighborhoods who have already installed this or are planning on installing them?
There are several neighborhoods and groups that have expressed interest in doing so. Only one has actually submitted for permits for the city to consider encroaching on city property.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councilmember Holstich.
Right. Lieutenant, if the police department has full control over the cameras, then this would mean that no member of the neighborhood would have access to any of that information, or anyone in the public, except to the extent that they're following procedures to obtain access consistent with your rules. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in terms of police department ability, what would this give you that you do not have now?
This gives us real-time information of wanted vehicles entering those neighborhoods, or whether it's a stolen vehicle, whether it's a vehicle wanted in a felony like a burglary or a homicide, and it gives us real-time information and access to those immediately, where currently we don't have any knowledge of that unless we happen to be in the area or somebody calls about a suspicious vehicle or person.
When it comes not to the neighborhood, but to HOAs, where there's a defined area that the homeowners association controls, and they choose to have cameras, is there any restrictions on their ability within an HOA to have cameras on their property?
There's currently no restrictions or regulations through the city. The city attorney is here, and he can talk a little bit more about that if you'd like. The city does not generally get in or interfere with the affairs of HOAs. They kind of self-govern themselves, and they can put cameras up on their property that belongs to them and have complete control and access to those if they choose. Flock, again, if they wanted a license plate reader in an HOA currently as it sits, they could put that there and decide whether they want to give the police department access or retain sole access for themselves. And we don't have any current regulations for that situation.
Are there any precedents either here in Palm Springs or in other cities where HOAs have given the police department direct access to the images on these cameras?
Several throughout California and throughout the United States.
And the kinds of issues that have arisen, any problems associated with police departments having that access?
I'm not aware of any, but I obviously don't know all the intricacies of the other agencies.
And is the police department supportive of the neighborhoods and HOAs providing direct access of these cameras to Palm Springs PD?
Very much so. It's a great public-private city and private entity relationship, and it helps us with crime prevention efforts.
No other questions? That's when it's time.
Councilmember Holstich?
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. Appreciate police department's review of these and the policies. So last time we had Flock here, this time we don't. So just explain to me and the public, I know we actually had public comment who was concerned about privacy. So just explain, if you can, just in detail about how it actually works and where the data goes. So we had a conversation about these license plate readers for the city of Palm Springs and our use of them through the police department and our protection of public and private information and all of that within our department. So can you explain a little bit how it works for these when they have an agreement with Flock, with an HOA or a neighborhood? Just like, what is the data specifically that they're getting? I know you said the images they retain. Like, how does it ping law enforcement? How does it ping for those the lists that it would normally ping for us, as we discussed? What is the retention policies and all of those things we discussed last time?
So there's a couple different things. If the neighborhood group or the private entity rather would like to keep, let's say they want to maintain sole access and they don't want to share unless a crime has occurred with the police department. If they choose to do that, again, the only thing they're going to get is date and time that vehicle came by and a picture of the vehicle. They don't have any access to any criminal databases that the police department uses or that the state uses. That information stays solely within that neighborhood and that organization, and it doesn't get sold, it doesn't get shared. I think the Flock had explained that the data that they do use to train their AI systems, right, which helps them look for a white Honda Civic or bumper stickers on the back window or a specific license plate in the state. But the alerts, like stolen vehicle alerts or the neighborhood will not get that information. The only way that that information would be available is if they do grant sole access to the police department, and then we would get the information on the wanted vehicles, the hit list or such. Otherwise, these cameras act as really kind of like a ring camera and anything else, but they do show the vehicles that come and go from that neighborhood or that specific street or location.
So is it like recorded in periods of time and then they can access the license plate data from that time? I have a Ring camera, right? But it's limited in time. And so, it's not like you can access, or I'm not able to access because I don't pay for the subscription, the entire, 24 hours or last 24 hours. So how does it specifically, like what information is being recorded that the neighborhood or HOA would have access to?
Again, the only information they're going to have access to, and I don't know if they have a 30-day window like we would before it's deleted. I believe that's the case. So for up to 30 days, they would have what vehicles passed in front of those cameras, capturing the license plate, the make and model of the vehicle, and date and time. And that's the only information they would have.
Sorry to keep asking in different ways. We also didn't have dinner before this meeting, so here we are. I haven't eaten in a long time. So they're getting a video recording.
Not a video.
No, they're getting screenshot pictures of all the license plates that have gone past that camera in the last X period of time for whatever their window is.
That's correct.
Do they have access to type in a certain license plate that they may be watching for or monitoring? Like, is there technology to track?
Their search capabilities, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm going to caution to say yes, they would have search capabilities to do a date and time. I don't know specifically if they can search for a license plate, but I can certainly find that out from Flock pretty quickly and get that back to us.
Thanks. Personally, I find HOAs dramatic enough than having camera abilities on your neighbors seem like a lot of information for a neighborhood. And it sounds like the benefit for the neighborhood is if there's an incident, they can share that with PD. Or if they give PD access, then our department can access it in real time and we can connect to the lists that would ping us for a problematic vehicle.
That's correct. And, currently, if there are HOAs there's a lot of HOAs that already have surveillance systems in their complex. So it's operating, the only difference here is that it's a still image and most of those are video. And they're able to play them back and see, who's coming and going. And if they have pan tilt zoom and it captured it, they have other capabilities there. These are still images only of the license plate and of the vehicle.
So we're saying HOAs, but in fact, we're talking about NORCs, neighborhood organizations as well, right? And so that seems like a really significant difference. If it's an HOA, which has a governing board and has, the rules for the neighborhood, et cetera, maybe other protections, a governance structure, versus a neighborhood organization, which has some of that, but also legally is different.
Well, certainly. However, I think here would be a challenge is if a neighborhood organization wanted the camera to face the street, but they could put it on their own property in a neighborhood. There's nothing currently that prevents that. There are, in the case of the one neighborhood that has applied for permitting, they don't have an area where they can do that, and they have to encroach on city property in order to place those cameras in their neighborhood. And so that's the current challenge with that particular neighborhood.
And explain the encroachment. So is the camera being placed on city property in a public right-of-way?
It would, yes, in a more than likely on a sidewalk. Obviously out of the way. I mean, there's not going to be ADA issues and anything like that. And the pole is really thin, but does stand probably 10 to 12 feet high, and then the camera would be mounted there. So if there's not existing infrastructure like a light standard or pole or light pole that's already in existence in that location, then they would have to encroach on the city property or sidewalk and install a pole.
I could imagine we might have policy considerations about where they're being placed, like what is in the view of them, right? Does PD have recommendations not right now, but would we then, that's what you're getting direction on if we do have a policy for permits, right? What type of street, what information it's facing for your neighbors or other, sensitive locations, schools, right? I mean, you could imagine sensitive locations that might not want to be, 24/7 taped.
Yeah, and we absolutely want to make sure that we regulate that these cameras are not facing, into the windows of people's
Right.
homes, et cetera, that they are, at a certain angle and they're only capturing the vehicles on the streets. So we definitely don't want to encroach on the privacy of homeowners in those neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant. Have the city finalized its agreement with Flock?
Yes, and as of yesterday, 10 of the 15 have been installed, and we've already had several hits and looking for and identified a couple suspects in crime. So that's been very successful in the first day.
Okay. And I'm going to follow up on a lot of the questions. Councilmember Holstage and I and the police spent a lot of time last time talking about the police use, and especially Councilmember Holstage, who's a lawyer who understands contracts a lot better, and we came up with a contract with Flock. But that contract with Flock they don't have to use the same thing with HOAs or neighborhood organizations?
They'll have their own agreement with HOAs, neighborhood organizations, yes, but it currently would not be a city-regulated contract.
To the city attorney, can we require that any camera that's on city property have that same details of the contract that we did?
That is a good question. The last time the council discussed this and directed us to look at this issue, our office looked to see if any other city had regulated the use of flock cameras or flock-type cameras on private property. We weren't able to find any. That's not to say that it can't be done legally. I think that we'd have to find a legal justification under the city's police power as to why we would be regulating on private property. And given the fact that without tying into the city's police department, these flock-type cameras operate very, very similarly to other security-type cameras that folks have, Ring cameras and whatnot. And so it may be difficult to distinguish between somebody who has a Ring camera and a flock camera. And so when you have those, that lack of distinction, it becomes harder to regulate. So I would say we would have to look at that to find out more definitively whether the city has the authority to regulate on private property.
Okay, but on city property, when they're asking for an encroachment permit or a neighborhood wants to do it, can we not only say that this police have to have sole and exclusive access to the data, can we also say, which is really in this contract we have with Flock, can we also say they have to have all the same terms of the contract that we have with Flock?
Within city rights-of-way, the city has much more authority, and so that type of regulation within city rights-of-way would be feasible from a legal perspective, yes.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say that we should do that. We also discussed when the police department was coming back last time about placement in neighborhoods. And there was a long discussion about being very conscientious of when it went into a neighborhood, of where it went, of making sure the community understood. And I know that we have, a neighborhood or multiple neighborhoods that want to do it. How do we ensure that they have the same community buy-in that the police do? And I realize the police will, because we'll hear from the residents, but
I imagine if we look at this and determine that the cameras have to be, that encroach on city property, that we would want to do just like we do anywhere else and engage that entire neighborhood in discussions and talk about the privacy issues, talk about who would have access, and everything that we've talked about here today. And then if we're, we're going to have to figure out, is there a neighborhood vote? What is there going to be? So we have to understand there's a majority. I don't know all of the nuances there, but I certainly would agree that we need to engage in a neighborhood where it will encroach on city property, that the entire neighborhood is comfortable with that.
Okay, so, and my preference, because when you talked about where the flock cameras were going to go initially, primarily was for the entrances and exits to our city, which makes a lot of sense.
That's correct, yes. The current cameras or the LPRs that we have signed with Flock are not near the neighborhoods. They're the entrances and the exits of the city limits.
Okay, so, I'm just going to comment now, but my preference, I would say that if we're going to use, if it's going to encroach on city property, they not only have to have mimic the same contract with Flock that we did in terms of privacy, but also would have to go the exact same process with the police placing in a neighborhood, so that, so it basically is somebody is giving you a camera and saying, we want this in, my neighborhood, Oasis del Sol, and you would have to go through that same process. Can we do that? Okay. But we can't on private property, even if someone within an HOA is just taking their camera and facing it on the street, on the house, or the building across the way, we can't control that.
I think it would be more difficult, and we'd really want to look at that further from a legal perspective.
Okay. But we can say that the police will not participate in anything that private people have, if they have access to.
Sure.
Whether it's on city or private.
Yep.
Okay. So if an HOA or someone decides to put up a flock camera and doesn't give, and you're not happy with where it's facing or anything, you can just say, like, well, then we're not going to be involved in the data usage.
Certainly, and I think that would be wise if a camera was facing somewhere that invaded somebody's privacy, their private home, that we would not want to have any part of that.
Okay, and just following up on that, even if you're okay with where it's placed, would you ever be comfortable with sharing with an HOA or neighborhood having access to data that you are also accessing?
Our preference would be to have sole access.
So we can we just say the police will not have access to anything that a private person, HOA or organization has? Can we legally do that, even if it's on their own land? Okay. All right. I mean, I obviously, anything that helps our police, and keeps our residents safe is my preference. It's the data issue, and we went last time, and we basically, the whole crux of the conversation was that we trust our police policy as it stands now because of who our police force is right now, but that we needed to protect ourselves going down the line. I think the same applies here. So, I know Councilmember Middleton had comments, and I went off. I'm sorry.
That's okay, not at all.
Can I ask a follow-up question if I may?
I did have a follow-up
ahead.
question
Go ahead.
myself. If a HOA has a camera, it's their property, on their property, and there's information on that camera that would help the police department investigate a crime that had been committed, shouldn't the police department have access to that camera and to that information?
So, we always request it currently if there's cameras in a location. It is absolutely up to them if they want to share it with us. Right. If we know it exists and they refuse, then we have to go the search warrant route in order to get that information.
Well, my concern is, if I understood correctly, Mayor, you were saying that we would not accept information, and I think that's a step too far if that's what you were saying.
If they're collecting data and giving it to the city, like on a ring system, that's one thing. The question is, if you're monitoring Flock, as I understand it, you would be pinged if there was a car. And so the question is, at the same time, the HOA, if they have access to it, they could potentially be pinged, and they're going to.
It's my understanding they don't get the pings and alerts of wanted vehicles.
They just search.
All they can get is search for, give me this date and time and show me what cars went through there. They may have the ability to search for the plate. I need to get that answered through Flock.
Okay, and I guess the real reason I'm saying this is not that we don't want our police to have data. I just don't want the fact that our police acted on something and the HOA knows what they acted on to interfere with our policing, if that makes any sense.
I think I follow, but my concern is that we not take any action that would limit the ability of an HOA to provide voluntarily information to our police department that our police department wants in order to investigate a crime.
So to clarify, I do agree that we don't want to avoid our police getting information. What I'm trying to avoid is private residents being able to see what our police are acting on. So if there's a car that enters their HOA and the police, you know, then they can report if something happens later on or whatever.
That I support.
Yeah.
To add to that is, you know, if an HOA puts a camera on private property, we would want to create an MOU with them that we have sole access to that camera, and they do not.
Thank you. Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you. Just follow-up questions. So we can require sole access for the police department for these cameras just on public property with the encroachment. Can we require it? We can't require it for private property?
I think it's harder to require on private property, but the city council could establish a policy on behalf of the city that says the police department is not going to participate in or accept information unless it's in compliance with the city's license plate reader policy, which the council is okay with.
Right, and that's that discussion about, are you incentivizing, are you supporting, helping the police department do their job, or are you impacting it negatively? So your answer about regulating on private property, but it does seem to really be collecting information of public access, public right-of-ways, et cetera. I'm like very concerned about sensitive facilities like daycares or schools or things where you might not want monitoring. I appreciate that it's picking up the license plates, but I'm just thinking of various ways it could be misused, the information. So to the city attorney, it would just take more legal analysis to see what the scope or the police powers of the city might be in regulating anything that might be like government functions, or, you know, I can put a camera across from the police department if I own that lot. I used to work at that building, monitor the police coming and going, keep a track of their license plates of certain officers. I mean, you could imagine the misuse of the technology, right? Even on private property, we would still want to regulate government uses and protect government use.
Yeah, I think we'd probably want to research that a little bit more. Certainly, the city has an interest in protecting the privacy of individuals, and that would have to be weighed against the right of people to, you know, film or videotape public places, which essentially is what we're talking about here. So,
thank you.
Councilmember Garner.
This is highly concerning. It's one thing to have cameras at the entrance to the city, which I also didn't support, but it's another thing entirely to not even know the answer to whether or not the HOAs can just look up people's license plates or not. I mean, to have a small group of citizens who can then find out who's coming and going, how often they're coming and going. I mean, this information can be used in a number of ways that's completely inappropriate. It's one thing to install cameras, and if a crime is committed, to provide that footage during that time to the police department. It's another thing entirely to just have access all of the time. The notice requirements as well. These neighborhoods that want to put it in the public right-of-way, are they knocking on every single door in that neighborhood and making sure that people understand exactly what is happening? This is not enough to say, hey, we're going to do a 1 PS blast, and that's it. We know that there's plenty of neighborhoods where the number of people who come in for 1 PS is extremely small. It's maybe 1% of the entire neighborhood. So I'm very concerned that this isn't a topic that is not getting the broad attention that it deserves for the public to actually weigh in a way that is meaningful to them. It's the first time that I saw information in English and in Spanish in the city of Palm Springs was signs at the entrance of my neighborhood saying that we report crimes. That was the first time that I saw Spanish being used, was to deter people from crime. There's just so many ways in which we act with the best of intentions, but we don't do enough to make sure that everyone is truly aware of what's going on and the implications of that. So I'm very concerned that we don't have nearly enough information. I'm very concerned about us allowing neighborhoods to put up any cameras in any public spaces beyond what we've already done.
Councilmember Middleton?
Yeah, and I appreciate those concerns and the reasoning behind them. We have a neighborhood where I've been to numerous meetings, and I can say very clearly that participation in that neighborhood is very extensive and includes a very large number of people. So I'm supportive of giving this neighborhood an opportunity and also consideration of other neighborhoods that might want to come forward to be a part of a pilot. I think it is critical that the police be the sole source recipient of this information so that it is in control of our police department, and no one within the neighborhood has access to that data. When it comes to HOAs and cameras on private property, that is, I think, a decision that the private property owner can and should make and does make on a daily basis. And if someone makes a determination to live or visit an HOA, then you are operating under that HOA's rules when you do so. So, and when it comes to HOAs, if we are going to receive information, then we need to receive that information on terms that our police department is comfortable with. What I do not want to do is take any action that would inhibit the ability of the police department to obtain data that would be useful to the department in the investigation of a crime.
Hostage?
I have really significant concerns about the proliferation of these cameras throughout the city, especially in public right-of-ways, especially if for private use. It's emotional because it's the safety of our communities. I've had neighbors tracking my movements, tracking my child, literally emailing the city attorney when my nanny is coming and going with my child, and more. And that's not just me as a council member. Obviously, that's a unique position. We've also had people in the neighborhood who have had significant safety issues and have made death threats against City Hall and city officials. And I'm just really concerned about the misuse of this technology when it's not in the police's hands in a way that can be regulated. I'm also extremely concerned about treating the neighborhood organizations as if they are HOAs, because they are incredibly different. I do not live in an HOA. I choose not to live in an HOA. God bless the people who serve on HOA's boards. It's much more difficult than this job. And I can only imagine how difficult it is once you have the data of your neighbors at their fingertips, saying, well, I literally have gotten emails from my neighbors saying, well, I know you received this email at 4:45, but city staff sent an email at 4:46, and you didn't know this you did know this information. I mean, that's the level in our neighborhoods, and can you just imagine this data in the wrong hands? I'm concerned about our officers' safety. I'm concerned about the use of these cameras on city facilities and sensitive areas. But I want to really emphasize the HOA versus NORGs, because NORGs are not HOAs, and they're not legally like HOAs. And like Councilmember Gardner stated, they don't have the governance and legal formation that an HOA has. And some of them are not representative, and some are nonprofits. I think many of them are 501c3s, right? Are they legal entities? Some of them have their nonprofit status, but they're also political entities too. And we have district elections, and they're not allowed to be political because they are 501c3s. But are all 501c3s?
No.
Right.
OPS has extremely strong rules prohibiting anyone from participating in a political fashion on the part of 1PS or any neighborhood organization.
Right, but if we are doing MOUs between HOAs, are we doing MOUs between NORGs, neighborhood organizations? Are we doing it between my cul-de-sac, Christie's cul-de-sac wants these, right? I mean, like, what's the level of power we're going to give to which types of agencies? So I just really want us to research that. So I want to hear from the mayor, of course, because I want, it's like, do we do it where we regulate and we require a permit and we require sole access, which seems really important. To the city attorney, I very much would like legal research about our power on private sites when it is the public right-of-way and public streets and city government uses. So I just want to hear from you, but overall, very concerned about allowing these in the city. And if we will, very much want, sole access.
So, yeah, and just to answer the question about neighborhoods, my neighborhood is an association. We're not incorporated or anything. So we have a bank account, and that's it. But again, if it's all of our interest to help in policing and our police force. So my recommendation would be anything that is on public property, whether it's an encroachment near an HOA or just in a neighborhood, would go under the exact same policy that we came up last time, meaning they have to have the agreement with Flock that we have, our police has sole access, the police do the exact same neighborhood interaction and caution. I mean, as at the last two meetings, you and Chief Mills were very clear that anything going into a neighborhood would be handled with extreme sensitivity. So this is not, I don't want a case where the neighborhood says, oh, I want it right here, and you're like, well, that's what the neighborhood wants. It has to be, this is what the police think is best and the neighborhood has bought into, and we have done our extensive research, I know some neighborhoods are very, very engaged. So and I'm sure that, some of them, 80% of the, well, I shouldn't say 80%, a large percentage know what's going on. I know in my neighborhood, if it happened, it would be 2% would actually know what's going on, just because we're new. I would like to look at what happens on HOAs in private property, not to what we're legally allowed to do, with a goal that we want to help the police and avoid misuse of data. And to the extent that an HOA says, we all agree that we should have these cameras, even though a neighborhood may not have that same buy-in, if the HOA votes, the police still need to make sure that the use of the data and the contract with Flock, if they're going to have regular access to it, matches what the city policy is. If a neighborhood HOA wants to have their own access and say, we saw this license plate and there was a crime committed and we're going to send you the image, that, we don't want to deny somebody from giving you information that can help, but it's different in terms of the real-time monitoring, I believe. I think that, does that make sense to everyone? I know Councilmember Garner is very concerned about this. You voted no last time. I don't want to suggest anything that would be less strict than what we put on last time. I know you didn't agree with it last time, but definitely don't want to do something that's more lenient that would create more neighborhood concerns.
I can't vote yes on any form of this. That doesn't mean that you all shouldn't do the best that you can possibly do to make it palatable and to be in line with what's already been done.
Okay. Councilmember Holstridge, being a lawyer, do you want to summarize better?
Oh, man. I mean, what I might bring back, because it seems like I need more information. It sounded like there was some more questions about what the regulatory framework might look like. Personally, I might ask for 2 options to come back, and that's an alternative where we regulate on public property, and we get more information about what, if any, regulatory power we have on private property. And I would like to consider an option where we do not allow these on public property. I don't know if there's 3 votes for that. And again, it's the consequences of regulating versus banning. Is that just going to move them to private property and then we will not have sole access, right? So I want to analyze that impact. But I think the questions we raised about, where would they be located in neighborhoods? What would the limitations be? What's the search capabilities? Yeah, can we require sole access? Those types of questions I would like to have them answered. If you're asking me to vote tonight, I would vote, yeah.
Well, I think we can say on private property, we should come back and look at what regulation options there are. On public property, we already have a policy in place.
No, we have no policy.
Well, we have the one that the police did. I mean, for their pudding. So I would say we have to treat this basically like a neighborhood is buying the camera for their neighborhood, contingent upon it meeting the city council policy. Is that not? I mean, we already agreed that they might be able to put it in neighborhoods, provided they go through this extensive checking.
At this time, I'm not prepared to supporting them on public property.
Okay, Councilmember Middleton.
I could suggest that, one, we're missing one of our colleagues this evening, and 2, I think it would be extremely helpful for the one neighborhood that is interested today in this, and any other neighborhood that might be out there that's interested, to sit down with the police department, with the city attorney, and outline for us what their processes and procedures would be, so that this can come back to us with clarity as to what it is that the rules would be that a neighborhood would operate under.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is, I think what has caused the most concern here is the unanswered questions, and as we've been discussing, more have come up. So I think we should have a bit more clarity on that, and probably treat the public and private separately, because we have a pretty good policy on our public. I mean, what the police use is, and that's probably easier to get public encroachment permit or any kind of public area to fall in line with that. Understanding that the HOAs are very different, and the only issue there right now is what access the police has at this point. And I would think if they want the police to have access, they should have sole access, but we can wait and see what regulatory options we have.
And if the neighborhoods, if we can work with the neighborhoods to understand like the true purpose for the public safety purpose, right? Because sometimes, and the analysis from the police department of how that could really solve and help the neighborhood and for public safety, right? Is this going to help people feel safer, or is it really going to make the neighborhood safer? You know, are they asking for more officers? Are they asking for more involvement? Like, what is the real goal here? If it's to, you know, solve crimes more quickly, I know that the police department has worked with Ring cameras and others, but like to really specify that from the neighborhood, because once one neighborhood asks for it, what do we have, 52? 52 will come, 40, 51 will come next, 48, whatever it is. It keeps growing and growing. It will be more and more and more. And so it'd be nice to, yeah, really set that clarity just from the police department standpoint too.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement that there needs to be a little bit more detail and interaction with some of the neighborhoods, and also when Councilmember DeHart, Mayor Pro Tem DeHart is here to finalize. Are we all in agreement on that? Okay. So there's no decision. Okay, so we're going to move on then. The next item is public comment on non-agenda items. This item has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Although the City Council values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. Our first speaker is Abraham Ishak, followed by Zach Flores.
Luther King Jr. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. These words resonate deeply, especially in times when our voices are critical in shaping the narrative around justice and equality. After our recent City Council meeting, the mayor acknowledged Martin Luther King Jr. Day, urging us to reflect on the legacy of a man dedicated to equal rights. However, a subtle irony unfolded when a chuckle rippled through the audience in response. This irony emerged as we, moments earlier, passionately spoke about human rights violations in Israel, a state endorsed by this mayor and council. Was the council channeling MLK's spirit when drafting a resolution supporting a state practicing apartheid? A state that oppresses an entire population based on ethnicity and engages in actions that contradict the principles of justice and equality? Examining the resolution's language reveals a concerning pattern. The term white moderate comes to mind. Critiquing passivity in the face of Semitic injustice. Regrettably, the resolution remains silent on injustices practiced by Israel, rendering it a silent bystander to the complex issues at hand. This passivity extends beyond the resolution itself, seen in the Council's reluctance for meaningful follow-up actions. As we voice concerns, our positions carry the responsibility to actively address and rectify injustices. In closing, let us not allow silence to be the legacy we leave. Dr. King's words compel us to confront uncomfortably truths and actively work towards a more just society. The irony should serve as a wake-up call, urging us to bridge the gap between our words and actions. Together, let us champion injustice, equality, and the enduring legacy of those who fought for a better world.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Zach Flores, followed by Mo El Abdallah.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Zach Flores. I'm a resident of Palm Springs. I have come today to make comment on the lack of movement or action taken by the Council to discuss in a public forum the October emergency resolution since it was passed. This is now the third time that the members of the community have come here to the Council to implore you to take a second look at the resolution. Tonight's meeting is the second time it could have been on an agenda item. How many more weeks will community members have to tell you about human rights violations, death tolls, and war crimes before you finally decide to do something? The lack of action is disappointing. It is sad that a council that purports itself to represent the interests of its citizens is unwilling to actually go on record to say anything. But by not putting this issue on the agenda, you stand on the privilege of silence. The Brown Act is supposed to protect the interests of the people, not the interest of elected officials. Saying something, anything, is better than nothing. Silence is complicity, and since October, this council has been sitting silent. When will this council have the courage to take action and get a reconsideration, an amendment to the resolution, or a new resolution calling for a ceasefire on the agenda? When will this council actually care to invite public comment on this issue and have a real discussion, unlike the rush job that was done 3.5 months ago? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mo El Abdallah, followed by Max McCartney.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is Mo, and I am a resident of Palm Springs. I'm here once again to kindly request for the emergency resolution passed on October 12th to be amended and for an additional resolution to be passed calling for a ceasefire. I'd like to share a statement now that was written by a friend of mine, Ida, a friend that happens to be Jewish, Israeli, and trans. Here's what she had to say. I'm an anti-Zionist Israeli trans woman who has been living and working in New York and LA for the past 12 years. I was personally affected by the horrors of October 7th. I know entire families that were murdered or kidnapped. I have close friends who lost multiple loved ones that day. Still, I am deeply perplexed and disappointed to learn about the City Council's recent resolution proclaiming unequivocal support for the State of Israel. Support which endangers the safety of both Jewish Israeli citizens and mainly Palestinians living under military occupation and apartheid for more than 7 decades. How does Israel's reckless campaign contribute to our safety when it has proven to end and endanger the lives of Israeli hostages, to send another generation of Israeli 18-year-olds in uniform to murder, be killed, or be traumatized, returning to civil society with a slew of new semi-automatic rifles everywhere you look? Meanwhile, the actual needs and hundreds of thousands of Israelis who were internally displaced during and after October 7th are being ignored. It would not be an exaggeration to say that we are lost as a species if we can't reach a fundamental agreement that the sanctity of human life and collective freedom are more important than any single form of nationalism, that laws and power structures need to shift, be dismantled, and be rebuilt to ensure said sanctity, that resisting a state when said sanctity is being trampled is a moral obligation. Think back to just 60-odd years ago when the city participated in the shameful yet legal practice of racial segregation. Imagine how a foreign city council would be remembered for proclaiming its steadfast and united support of a segregating governing body instead of joining the universal call for equality, freedom, and dignity for all human beings. How does supporting this murderous and neglectful frenzy destroy Hamas when Hamas's ideology was born out of Israel's arrogant attempt to militarily solve the problem of Jewish safety by restricting Palestinian freedom? If October 7th can teach us anything, let it be that Palestinian freedom and Jewish safety are inextricably linked. If the city of Palm Springs truly cares for the lives of Israelis and Palestinians, let it join the hundreds of thousands calling for a ceasefire and hostage exchange and calling to an end to unconditional U.S. financial and military aid. That is the support we, the people, truly need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Max McCartney, followed by Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero.
Hello again, Mayor and City Council. Good to see you all. My name is Max McCartney. I'm a resident of Palm Springs. I'm here again today asking to amend the emergency resolution passed on October 12th and release an additional resolution requesting a ceasefire in Gaza. We are observing the core of unmitigated and unbounded state terrorism on not just Gaza, but also Palestinians in the West Bank. This unbridled boundlessness of oppression guarantees a cyclical outcome whereby neither Israelis nor Palestinians are ever going to have security. There is a long-standing U.S. bipartisan tradition of providing exorbitant free quantities of weaponry and aid for Israel, all funded by the U.S. taxpayers as well as political cover. It is literally cost-free for Israel to oppress and occupy Palestinians. This could all be ended tomorrow if the U.S. wanted to stop funding it. Instead, Biden has chosen to bypass Congress twice now to send Israel billions of dollars in additional military aid. This is in addition to the unconditional $3.8 billion we give Israel every year. Minneapolis just passed a ceasefire resolution today for being a resident of this city that prides itself on equality. It's upsetting for me that for that to be selective. So again, I'm asking you to please amend the emergency resolution passed on October 12th and release an additional resolution requesting a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero, followed by Brad Anderson.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, I ask that this council consider passing resolutions in support of China and Russia. You're probably asking yourself, why should this council pass resolutions in support of these two countries? Well, this council has demonstrated that it considers itself fully capable to take positions on international affairs. Indeed, these two nations deserve your steadfast support because they, like Israel, seek to expand their territorial claims. Russia invaded Ukraine just less than 2 years ago and accuses Ukraine of committing acts of terrorism. 3 of you were on the council at that time and missed the opportunity. Take the time to correct that oversight. Over in Asia, China is seeking to establish full sovereignty over Taiwan. A simmering issue for years, it's really building up momentum now. The city needs to get on it so it can be at the forefront of things. In fact, passing a resolution supporting China would continue the city's steadfast support of nation states that dehumanize people groups. Just as Israel forces Palestinians off ancestral lands into camps, China persecutes its Muslim population and places them into re-education camps. If this council is going to take positions on international issues, then commit to it. Surely there are other nations, states, and governments that need your support. Surely there are acts of terrorism that need your time, your thoughts, your comments, and your resolutions. Surely there are those who live in our community that have roots and loved ones and other ties to other nations, and surely they deserve to have their local city council create and pass resolutions that reflect their respective backgrounds. I encourage you to take up these causes. Why should October's resolution be a one-off event? Indeed, as a local government body, you need to concern yourself with global issues because that makes the best use of your time, right? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Brad Anderson, followed by Martin Lucky Star Hilden.
Good evening again, Brad Anderson, City of Rancho Mirage. I want to just take the opportunity just to refresh, hopefully, your memories of my past comments concerning how the city conducts public participation, meaning in public comments. You have 16 items, or 17 with the presentation, and you provide the public 2 minutes for the entire agenda. Minus the non-agenda comment and public hearings, I guess, but you had none tonight. I just urge you to reconsider your stance of how you conduct public meetings because it's very unusual for the state of California to do this. It's not best practices, believe it or not. And so you're really stifling public participation, public comment, public opinions to be shared with the other residents of your city and the region. I represent the region really when I go to these public meetings. And just to piggyback on what the other members were saying, or the other public members were saying about the urgency clause, and I was at that meeting, and I believe, again, that was not conducted correctly because it wasn't an urgent cause, and that's something you should reconsider too of how you bring things to the council. And even tonight with the item 1B, you should have just pulled that right off the bat. It would have saved me some time. And that's all I have. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. The next speaker is Martin Lucky Star Hilden, followed by Darrell Terrell.
All of you know me here because, yes, I have danced in both fountains, inside and outside the airport. That rascally rabbit in me. What I gotta say, because I know I told you, follow me on Instagram. What I know, God blessed me, his lucky star, because Lisa Middleton, you know, God gave the LGBTQ his queer eye. That's deep. Deep. Because I know shenanigans, dancing on my mom, jumping up and down on my mom's bed in her dress. God, at 5, I don't know. I feel different. I don't know what it is yet. But we'll figure it out together. That's deep. But I know his love for me, that deep, because he blessed me, his lucky star. Listen. 1,000,000 times and counting if you need to, because I need you just as much as I blessed me. Biggest blessing I think he's ever given. I'm sure you follow me on Instagram. I can't get into that damn account anymore, but it's all there. He blessed me with his biggest blessing ever, and he gave it to me. That's how much he loves me. Foundation. Save Mother Earth. Capital M, capital E, Earth emoji. We. A gazillion. Priceless. Nobody makes more than Mother Earth, because who do you think? God. I know. She's priceless. It's God's timing. Perfect, because I am his chosen one, because she is a gazillion.
Thank you.
Yeah, make sure
Your time's
you
up.
take care of her children down here, closest.
Mr. Hilden, your time is up. Thank you.
Because the first ever foundation is here in Coachella
Thank you.
County, because
Thank you.
the most corrupt.
We have our next speaker is ready to speak. Thank you. The next speaker is Darrell Terrell.
Because the first, the second is real. Mind, body, soul, balance. Mother Earth's out of balance. We're out of balance, children. God's calling. He blessed
Mr. Hilden, your time is up. Thank you.
all no one. Got their back, they got mine. God bless Mother Earth first.
Good evening. My name is.
My path in God's hands.
I'm not speaking
We win.
as a Moreno Valley Planning Commission, but as myself. My name is Darrell Terrell. Over the last year, I've been thinking a lot about your city. I'm reminded of President Kennedy's speech at Rice University in 1962, because it was there that he articulated his bold vision, saying, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it was easy, because it was hard." He took seemingly an impossible goal, something never attempted in human history, and made it a mission. The moonshot goal, as it came to be known, set a standard for not just for the United States, but the world. And he ushered in a new era of American innovation. 7 years later, Neil Armstrong spoke those famous words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," and turning the moonshot goal into a mission accomplished. It wasn't easy, but with a vision to guide them and that famous American work ethic that got it done. Throughout the years and through your history, your city has often had been one of the leading the change, the blazing new trails, turning your dreams into reality, even amidst a pandemic and a great recession. Now it's time to take your community to a new horizon and providing economic mobility to your residents to live their American dream through the creation of a Palm Springs Earn and Learn Center, where you'll be working with the business community in the county and creating apprenticeship programs and training programs for your residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the speaker on Zoom? Jovita Ayala? No? Is there any other public comment?
No further comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. The next item is City Council and City Manager request for upcoming agenda development. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As of right now, when we look at the calendar coming up for February 8th, we will be bringing forward our Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. We've got updates for you on the rental assistance and affordable housing updates that you've expressed interest in. We want to have a discussion on the use of our opioid settlement funds that we expect to be receiving. We have finalized, we'll be presenting our zoning code update RFP that's about to go out. And we're going to give you an update report on our cannabis ordinance that you've asked for, and we pushed back from last council meeting at Mayor Pro Tem DeHart's request. On the 29th, we'll have a council call-up of the Planning Commission decision on Starbucks that we discussed about, and later in March, we'll have the second hearing on our annual action plan of the CDBG program. I did want to take one real quick moment to mention to you that, you know, we're very excited to report that the Homeless Navigation Center on McCarthy Street is moving forward for our homeless and unhoused population. With our early entry facility, we are planning to open in March as planned with the first 50 beds. Just as a reminder to the community, this is not a drop-in facility. It'll be and when it's fully built out, it'll include our 80 interim housing units, our modular beds with comprehensive wraparound services, which we expect to open later this summer to follow up with the first 50 beds. We are working on details. We'd like to invite the public to an open house when the time is right, and we're working on more details to that. Council members in the community will remember that right now more than $40 million has been secured for the facility. About $8.5 million came from the city. The Home Key program through the state of California awarded us $16 million, and a total of $18 million came from the county of Riverside. And Mr. Mayor, I know we did a press release this week about that funding. I want to let you know Deputy City Manager Flynn Fagg and our city engineer Joel Montalvo and Jay Verada in Community Development are working diligently to keep this project on track. And of course, we're working with Martha's Village. Our new navigation center we think will be really a game changer and great assistance to our police department and our social service providers when it comes to comprehensive services for unhoused residents. So I just want to take a quick second to give you a little verbal update and more updates to come as we move closer to that March opening. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other council member comments or agenda? Okay, I wanted to mention two things. We celebrated this week the opening of Living Out Senior LGBT apartment residence, which was quite exciting. It's a pretty unique place. I'm not sure anything else really exists like it, with a great new restaurant and a pet store and facility for our community. I also wanted to congratulate our police force. We had, I think, 16 members of the Costa Rican National Law Enforcement come to our city to learn about our policing practices and how to deal with violent crime and other crime in their country. And we should be very proud of our police force that they saw a real value, and I know I spoke to them both before and afterwards. They were excited to be here, and afterwards they were especially appreciative of all that they had learned in the 2 or 3 days they were here. So thank you. Councilmember Middleton.
Okay, just one quick comment. The Riverside County Transportation Commission's annual workshop is taking place in Palm Springs at the Renaissance Hotel. We met this afternoon. We will be meeting again tomorrow morning. The first order of business today was a discussion of the CV Rail project. It became a 90-minute discussion in great detail, but at the conclusion of a representative from every city in the county of Riverside, along with all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, unanimously reaffirmed the Commission's full support for moving forward with the CV Rail project.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, so we will adjourn. The next regular City Council meeting will be held Thursday, February 8th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.